vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The agenda is adopted. Next item is approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion from Shook, seconded by Hillis. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? Willis can't get them. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The minutes are approved. All right, that next takes us into public comment. Before we get started on that, just to remind everybody of the protocols for Finance Executive Committee, you will be given 3 minutes to speak. In this committee, you can't donate your time to somebody else. You just basically get your 3 minutes. I will call your name as it appears on my screen. You will see timers on the screens. I would ask that as the clock winds down to 0, you wrap your comments up as well. If you have written comments that you don't get to finish them, if you'll just give them to our staff, we can make sure we get copies to everybody as well. And I think that's it on the just the protocols. All right. All right, the first person, I'll read the first 3 names: Thomasina Siniard, followed by Sasha Von Hanna, and then Adrian Oriella Lodis, I believe. So Thomasina Siniard, if you'll go ahead and come to the podium, and your time will start as soon as you step up to this microphone.
Will you?
One moment, Mr. Chair.
Hold on 1 second. Let's make sure your mic is on. Give us 1 sec.
This is very exciting, isn't it?
Okay, go ahead and start, please.
Oh, very exciting. Oh, I can hear myself. This is all very exciting. It was once believed that proper science meant that animals were machines. No real emotion, no feeling. And as part of that, there was a scientist who famously nailed his family dog's paws to a board and began vivisecting the dog alive. Because, well, the dog doesn't have emotion. It's not feeling it. And why waste the time of waiting for the animal to be dead when you could open it and see the heart beating as its terrified blood is circulated, the lungs going up and down as it screams? And I find you doing much the same today. You have so many people who have spoken saying, "Dear God, stop Cop City," and at every turn, it seems you say, well, these don't count as spoken words. These don't count as people. These don't count as emotions that are being spoken to us. No, we can dig into this heart and we can dig out the spine and replace it with coins. We can replace it with these things that hurt, that cause damage, but boy, howdy, I'll get written in a paper, and won't that be nice? And I find that deplorable. In the same way that looking back on those scientists, anyone who has seen a video on TikTok of a puppy being cute cannot think of anyone nailing a dog's paws to a board and cutting into it without revulsion. And in the same way, we see what's happening here. Time after time, people have spoken against this and been ignored over and over. And it feels the same as a dog with paws to the board. You hear us, you see us, you are making choices over and over to pretend that we are not, because you want something to the detriment of, shall we say, 98%? But boy howdy, that 2%, that's a shiny number, isn't it? I do like it. And you don't see the blood on your hands. And as long as you don't see it, that's fine. That's okay. As long as you stuff your ears with cotton and you don't hear the dog, as long as you wash your hands, that's fine. And that's what I see happening over and over. I don't understand. And as you are seen here, I hope and pray that you will not cause the histories to look on you with revulsion and say, how could you not have known?
Thank you. Next up is Sasha Von Hanna, followed by Adrian Oriella Lodiz, followed by Mail Kess.
Hi, I'm a mother and member of the Walani Coalition. I've been a Georgia voter living in District 5 the past 16 years, calling Atlanta home for over 22 years. My child and I were a mere blip in your day, 6 minutes out of 7 hours of public comment on May 15th. It was a family field trip. We spent my husband's birthday with you. And while the energy of solidarity was invigorating, that was not our preferred way to spend our celebrations together, as I'm sure it wasn't for you, Councilmember Hillis. But here I am again, and the truth is, I don't want to be, but I will keep coming back. Last time, I specifically called out that for you to practically give away 381 acres of public forested land for $10, and then entertain buying 46 acres more for $1.6 million made absolutely no sense. I called out that the disparity in valuations of the South River Forest by the City of Atlanta is egregious, and yet the council, still late into the night, approved an ordinance to authorize negotiations with the Conservation Fund for the purchase of 46 acres, not to exceed approximately $1.6 million to provide additional parkland in the South River Forest area, and introduce an ordinance allocating $31 million to Cop City, ignoring all the opposition. The math doesn't add up. You folks are concerned about finances, right? How can you devalue the irreplaceable largest urban tree canopy to $10 for 50 years and then justify spending $1.6 million public dollars on 46 more acres of it? How can you so carelessly consider spending our hard-earned tax dollars on systems of harm instead of care? Not to mention the additional $20 million written into the leaseback payment plan reported today by the Atlanta Community Press Collective. Make it make sense. I know you can't, and that's why this is the perfect opportunity to just say no. No to funding the Public Safety Training Center, no to 31 or 51 million, no to all of it. Tell APF that the people of your city are trying to survive the largest income disparity in the country, battling a devastating housing crisis, crippling food insecurity, and are tired of all of the police violence. Tell them that this is a PR nightmare that you just can't support. Tell them that you are prioritizing the interests of the people and future generations. Please save Walani. Please stop Cop City. Thank you.
Thank you. We've been joined by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet. Next up is Adrian Aurelia Lodiz, followed by Mail Kess, and then Joetta Burnett.
It's Adrian Aurelia Lodiz, but I go by Leah, so that's a lot easier. I'm going to take my 3 minutes to address some of the claims made in the 2 pro-Cop City AJC op-eds y'all were involved in pushing out. I say y'all because although only one was made by Mayor Dickens, the AJC is owned by Cox Enterprises, which y'all probably know, who have donated millions to the Atlanta Police Foundation over the years, clearly demonstrating a conflict of interest with regards to journalistic integrity. But this was evident the second the AJC published 2 disingenuous op-eds the day after over 7 hours of public comment of your constituency voicing their concerns against Cop City. There was not a single one that was for. One of the more despicable parts, though, was when Mayor Dickens ignored the public comment made by Amy St. Pierre's close friend, reminding City Council of her staunch anti-Cop City position. And yet he went on to take it one step further and use her murder to justify a project she advocated against. And while I don't have the time to tear Bill Torpy's op-ed to shreds, I think him framing hundreds, over 200 of y'all's constituency, framing hundreds of residents showing up for public comment during a workday as the No Cop City crowd delivering bodies to Atlanta City Council, as if these aren't concerned people, constituents, again, your constituents, who came on their own volition during their time, during their workday, says all that we need to know. With all that said, y'all's mask is already clearly made of glass, and your days in power are numbered. If you vote for the $30 million for this project, we will not stop. We'll be back on June 5th. So instead, stop the corruption now. It's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mael Kess, followed by Joetta Burnett, and then Ann DeMartini. All right, is Mael Kess, I may be pronouncing it wrong. Okay, we'll move on. Joetta Burnett.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm here to speak for the forest because we need the earth and we need fresh air, fresh water, and the clean earth. And that's why I'm here to say, stop Cop City. And the Police Foundation in its beginning, it was formed in order to catch runaway slaves. And that's what it's still doing, killing so many people. All of these were killed because they were considered runaway slaves. And it's time to end all the violence against human life forms, all types. And another topic, Mr. Biden sent to Georgia $8 million for migrants to come to Georgia. And Julian Bond signed off on the closed Peachtree and Pine. People out here every day need a place to live, they need water to drink, they need a shower. A lady Saturday, when I was coming back through downtown, she said, "Do you have 50 cents?" I said, "No." And then she said, "Oh, I gotta pee." Then she pulled down her clothes and urinated right there on Forsyth Street. That was sad. Now, why can't she get some of these $8 million that was sent here in order to have a place to live, to have a shower, and to have some food to eat? That's wrong here in this city and in this whole state. When you see this every day, you just walk down the street down here and you'll see those tents. You'll see people with big old bags. You'll see people that's got big old blankets trying to have a place to sleep and nowhere to go to the toilet. That's why that lady pulled her clothes down Saturday and urinated right there on the street coming down, when I was coming down Forsyth Street. I mean, it's really sad here in America. Where's the true democracy? Where's the true rights? And where are the true protections in this earth? And not just only that, for the human life forms, but all life forms. As I said, the soil, the life of the soil, the life of water, the life of fresh air, because we don't want pollution, and that's why we must stand up now for Stop the Cop City and to help these people here that really need help. Is anybody going to stand up and help the people here that's walking down the street to have no food to eat, that have no clothes to put on, that have no place to sleep? Who's going to help them? Is anyone here going to help them? I see y'all looking, so ain't nobody saying nothing about helping we the people in this United States and in Atlanta, Georgia.
Thank you. Next up is Ann DeMartini, followed by Devin Franklin, and then Kiana Jones.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name's Andy Martini. I've lived in Atlanta for about 2 years now, and I recently moved from District 3 into Councilperson Hillis's District 9. And I chose to move here and buy real estate and pay Atlanta city taxes because I thought it was a place with progressive leadership. I am here today to speak out against allocating any public money to the current conception of the Public Safety Training Center. Increased law enforcement recruitment and increased law enforcement training does not keep us safe. Evidence shows that training does not change police behavior, and that policing behavior disproportionately brutalizes Black and brown communities. especially in light of the news broken today by the Atlanta Community Press Collective that shows through open records requests that the total price tag of this ordinance would be $51 million through the leaseback agreement, not just the $31 million that's been reported. I'd like to take a little time to suggest other ways to use public money that truly improve public safety. So one is we saw some media coverage of Atlanta firefighters asking for support for this training center. Well, separate it from the police. If the council wants to invest in firefighters, perhaps they could increase firefighter pay like the firefighters asked for, or they could use the money to rebuild the condemned concrete tower on Claire Drive that's been used for live fire training. There's a reason that there is not a song called F the Fire Department. The council could also add additional funding to policing alternatives and diversions initiatives, which according to its April report has completed 78 diversions and had 205 successful community response engagements in 2023. Keeping people out of jail and addressing their immediate basic needs for housing and support services is real public safety. Adding funding to PAD could allow it to expand its service hours, which is a much better use of our tax money than a militarized police mock city that Atlantans have continually told you we do not want.
Thank you. Next up, Devin Franklin, followed by Kiana Jones, and then Oren Panavka.
It is a good thing to have money and the things that money can buy. It is also good to check up once in a while and make sure you haven't lost the things that money can't buy. On that note, I would like to talk to you all today a bit about integrity, transparency, and accountability. The first thing I'm going to bring to everyone's attention, because people who are watching on screen can't tell, the seats behind me to my right are empty. It will make it appear that this room is empty right now. Seats that are normally occupied by community members and, as we know, are most visible during public comment and during presentation. These seats have been marked as reserved for Atlanta Police Department personnel or representatives, and they are currently empty and not available for citizens to sit in at this point in time. So we have an optical situation that we're dealing with at this point in time, in addition to the main reason why I want to talk to you all concerning Cop City. The Atlanta Community Press Collective published an article shortly before council committee started today, detailing that in addition to the $30 million or so that we know was going to be given in a lump sum to the project, that essentially a blank check is being given to the mayor to make payments totaling up to an additional $20 million to bring the total of Cop City to about $51 million. That is an amazing amount of expenditure, especially when you take it in tandem with the fact that the mayor has also recently adopted a new policy of not providing details on the budget in terms of line items. The point of Cop City, as we have been told, is to help resolve and reduce crime in the city of Atlanta. And I find it amazing that we can find $30 million to build a training facility without having any details about what curriculum or training looks like. But we have an Office of Violence Prevention that has maybe one person. No, I'm not sure what the funding is, but I know that the initiatives and directives that come from the Office of Violence Prevention have not been seen in this community for an institution that says that it wants to reduce crime. I would also want to make note of the fact that you all have, like everyone has said, peaceful process, participate in government, come make your voice heard. And the people responded to that. Nearly 400 people showed up last week to come provide comment or locate or donate time to speakers. And in response to that, when we walk into the building today, we see over 60 police officers in the atrium in response to people wanting to come and talk. Be mindful. Last Monday was a peaceful protest. It was civic engagement.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Your time is up.
Stop Cop City.
All right, thank you. Next up is Kiana Jones, followed by Oren Panofka, and then Gloria Tatum.
Well, let me just pick right back up where Devin left off about all these cops that's outside. Is somebody's life in danger other than mine and my children? Is somebody sitting up here on this dais' life in danger? Are we getting death threats? What's happening? Because why are we paying these people to sit around and do nothing to try to intimidate the public? And why do you feel okay with that? Why are you okay, Marcy Collier Overstreet, with even wanting the National Guard in your city? Why are you okay? You think you too pretty to get jacked up? You might, but we don't. Because we know that nobody, especially when you have black skin in the city of Atlanta, is exempt from getting snatched up by the pigs. We know it. So you bring all of these officers in here and you claim that you have an issue with retention and you have so many vacancies. Well, maybe the officers who are already getting paid should do something other than sit in the atrium of City Hall to intimidate people. Maybe you should do something more than try to go ahead with Mayor Dickens' optics and play along to make it seem like there's only outside agitators who oppose Cop City. And you know what? You might be right, because I am an outside agitator, because I am so outside of your BS. I am so outside of your so-called respectability politics and your ignorance and the fact that you don't care about your neighbors. I am so over the fact that you sit there week after week and look at people with an expression of disdain as you continue to piss in their face and tell them that it's raining. I am an outsider, and yes, I'm agitating this whole system that y'all got going on up here. You know that $33 million, even though we know that the price tag continues to go higher, $33 million could be put into child care, wraparound services for schools, teachers, housing, adequate, affordable housing. $33 million could be put into mental health services for the people of the city of Atlanta. $33 million could go to policing alternatives. $33 million could do quite a bit to restore what you've already torn down at the Weelaunee Forest. But is a forest worth $33 million? The value of a forest is immeasurable. When you talk about what the South River Forest means to the people of DeKalb, and we know you don't care about DeKalb because we can't vote and that's why you're there, but also because we black as hell and we still there. But that forest is life for us. But what we gonna be is hell on your ass when election time comes.
Thank you. Next speaker is Oren Panofka, followed by Gloria Tatum, and then Don O'Neill.
Hello, my name is Oren. I'm here as a student organizer at Emory, which is in Councilmember Wan's district, and an organizer who's been working with students from across Atlanta. I want to start by thanking Council members Westmoreland and Bakhtiari for being so generous with their time last week in meeting with us. But that is to say, Councilmember Wan, we've been trying to get in contact with you. You're a hard man to reach, but we want to meet with you as well, specifically because this project needs to be stopped. I want to echo what Devin was saying a little bit ago. There was an article that came out today, the Atlanta Community Press Collective, saying that the total cost for this project could be up to nearly $85 million from public money to the APF. And I think that should be incredibly concerning to everybody on this committee when we are giving enormous amounts of money to a private group that this body does not have direct oversight of or of how they use that money, especially when we are underpaying city workers right now. There are city workers who cannot afford to pay their rent, who are living in their cars around the perimeter. Also when education is underfunded, when people are starving in this city, but also to echo what Kiana said, when there are essentially thugs in blue uniforms who are standing outside being paid by the city to intimidate citizens who are here to speak out against them. I think that's a completely unacceptable use of funding already. So to go and give what would ostensibly be almost like a third of what the Atlanta police gets every single year to a private group to train them to be further militarized, to further intimidate the citizens of Atlanta is an awful use of this funding. Councilman Wan, I encourage you to reach back out to us because the students in your district and from the entire city of Atlanta want to speak with you about this, as well as all the rest of you on this committee. Please vote against this. Stop Cop City. Yeah.
Thank you. Next up is Gloria Tatum, followed by Don O'Neill, and then Sarah Giordano.
Good evening, council members. This issue is not just a local issue. This is a national and an international issue. I know because reporters in Germany contact me about information going on here. And the reason it's international is because of climate change and because of the history of police violence, not only in this country, but all over the world. So I'm asking you, so just you people are going to have an influence on stuff that's happening all over the world, because the same thing's happening all over the world that's happening here. I'm asking you to withhold the $33.5 million funding for Cop City. This is a land grab by a private corporation called the Atlanta Police Foundation, and they're stealing public property promised by the Atlanta City Council in 2017 to be designated as public parkland forever, not to be sold or swapped or given away or anything else. It's public parkland. The Atlanta Police Foundation wants to use this facility as a fundraiser to rent out to police in other states and the Gilly program in Israel. This will increase funds for the Police Foundation to support politicians who will do what they want them to do and defeat politicians who oppose them. That's a good circle there. Atlanta does not need a school for assassins to train foreign police in urban warfare to control citizens with military tactics and equipment. This is what corruption and violation of the law looks like. It erodes democracy and people's faith in government. The police have a violent history of killing unarmed and/or innocent people of color. And because of that history, we want an independent investigation of the killing of Manuel Turan, called Tortuguita, the environmental activist who was shot 57 times by 6 Georgia State Patrol officers who have not faced any justice for what they did. Manuel was sitting in his tent in a meditative position with his hands up when he was shot and killed. The police do need reform. They need to know how to de-escalate a situation. They need accountability for their actions. They do need all of that. But they don't need more training the way they've been getting it, shoot to kill and make up lies later. And they don't need any more military equipment where they look like soldiers and we're the enemy.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Well, I'm not through.
Ms. Tatum, if you have printed comments, we can make copies for council members if you'd like. Next, followed by Sarah Giordano, Jamie Loeffner, and then Lorraine Fontana.
My name is Dawn O'Neill. I know this is a finance meeting, but I'm here to talk about life, not money, not finances. More police in our community does not make our community safe. What makes our community safe are resources. What makes our community safe are jobs, after-school programs. That's what we need in our community. We do not need a militarized police training facility in our backyards with outside agitators coming in to train. With Israeli police coming to train, as Georgia sends police over to Israel to train. So who actually are they at war with? Are they at war with our community? So they have to train in our community to be at war with us. Let me tell you why we don't want Cop City in our backyard. Tortuguita, Jamarian Robinson, who right now his family is at the Russell B. the federal building because the cops want qualified immunity. Alexia Christian, Anthony Hill, DeAndre Phillips, Jimmy Atchison, Oscar Kane Jr., Rayshard Brooks, Kevin Davis, Nicholas Thomas, Javis Benjamin, Vincent Truitt, Anthony Boykins, who was 12 years old. The police did a pit maneuver and killed this child. Nigel Collins, Katherine Johnson, who I believe was 72. This is why we don't want the police in our neighborhoods. We don't feel safe with police in our neighborhoods. We don't want Cop City in our backyard. We don't want Cop City anywhere. Not just in our backyard, we don't want it anywhere. Because they are trying to kill citizens. So you want to train them to kill us more? No, we don't want Cop City anywhere. I want to take the last few minutes of my time and honor the lives that were killed by police in our city. Stop Cop City.
Thank you. Next up,
Stop Cop City.
Sarah Giordano, followed by Jamie Lochner, and then Lorraine Fontana.
Hello. I'm glad to be here, and this sense of community is really overwhelmingly been positive over the last couple years, despite having to come back here over and over again. Many of us wear many hats, so I'm speaking today as many in different roles. I'm a parent. I'm also a resident of Atlanta. I'm a homeowner. People seem to care about that here. I am also a voter. I think you may care about that as well. I'm an educator of young folks and also old folks. I'm a professor. I'm a union member with United Campus Workers. I care about labor and people being paid decent wages so that we can live. I'm also the victim of a violent crime. And while I suspect there are many closed-door meetings and interests at work here, so what I say may not matter, at least publicly I hear that those of you in favor of diverting funds into this project care most about crime and safety. So I'd like to take my time today to share my perspective as a victim of a violent crime. I care deeply about violence, the harm done by it, and have been concerned over the last decades about the short-sighted ways that violence is understood. I've come to understand through studying that the dominant ways of thinking about violence are actually intentional for maintaining an unjust society that only benefits the richest. But many can speak more to that today and have over the last 2 years. In 2007, my partner and I were the victims of a home invasion. For about 15 minutes or maybe less, your brain does really weird things when you're in the middle of a traumatic event. We were held at gunpoint at our houses, in our home. My partner had been physically attacked, and I was unsure whether she was okay. After the two men with guns left our house, we spent the next 2 hours feeling powerless and scared as men with guns, many of them, I can't remember how many now, not as many as are out there, but similar looking, as these men with guns walked in and out of our home at their own discretion, controlling the boundaries of what was supposed to be our home in a way that extended our trauma. I still have trouble sleeping today, 16 years later. These men who occupied our homes for 2 hours told us where to sit, where we couldn't sit, pressured us to give them information in a moment of trauma, and stopped our friends who were standing out in the rain ready to actually support us and take care of us from entering our home and comforting us. Those police were not APD, they were City of Avondale Estates police, but not much difference, I think, across the United States. And there were also GBI officers who have been involved as well. I had called 911 in a moment of panic, not knowing if we were safe. I see my time is ending, so I can tell you I can share more, but I do not think we need more policing. We do not need more police. We need a sense of safety, and we need healing through movements like transformative justice and Please Stop Cop City.
Thank you. Jamie Loeffner, followed by Lorraine Fontana and Tim Franzen.
I just wanted to second something before I begin, and that is that these seats were reserved by the APD in order to make it look to anybody at home or to any records of this meeting as if there's no one here. But there's a lot of us. There's a lot of us here that want to stop Cop City. Here's your chance. Take whatever excuse you want. I don't care what you use. Use us, use the constant budgetary changes, use the increase in monies, use whichever one saves you face. Just stop it. I know why I want to stop it. To me, the police facility that's proposed, their plans are part and parcel of Atlanta's decision makers' abandonment of poor and everyday people by reportedly placing the mere desires and wish lists of the city's wealthy and the corporations, including the Atlanta Police Foundation, above all the needs of all the rest of us. Elevating the wealthy's desires for social stability enforced by your thugs over our need for civil rights and freedom from police brutality and racism. You have the power to stop this facility. I've heard nothing that says that the police aren't going to be using this as a urban warfare facility, a place of training for urban warfare, and that's urban warfare they plan against us. We don't want that. We're begging you not to let them do that. This is your opportunity, and I don't care what you have to do to save that face. Find in your heart just enough of you to back down a little and keep your places on this council. You've heard eloquent reasons to not support this Cop City, this police facility. I'm not telling you that. I'm just saying use the power you have to withdraw your support.
Thank you.
Stop Cop City. Stop Cop City.
Next up is Lorraine Fontana.
My time wasn't up,
sorry.
sir.
Keep going.
Stop Cop City. 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 Stop Cop City.
All right, thank you. All right, Lorraine Fontana, you're up, followed by Tim Franzen and then Gabriela Solis.
Oh, and I was told I could not sit where I needed to sit because of this placement of these police that aren't here.
Mr. Chair, can I have a quick question?
Yeah, hold on, Ms. Fontana. Yes,
Can
Councilmember
we make an
Bexar.
accommodation for somebody who's clearly experiencing a disability?
I would say that was not set up by us, but I would say go ahead and sit there. They're not being taken, so please. Thank you, Councilmember Backyard.
Yeah,
Wienerson,
I'm
thank
very
you.
sorry that happened.
Sorry. Ms. Fontana, you have the floor.
Hello, everybody. I believe that my council person, Amir, is on this committee, but is not here this morning.
No, he's not on this committee.
but I want to address this to everybody anyway. I think I've been very, very challenged to not be totally depressed and give up on a lot of things, one being what's happening in Atlanta with this police center, especially when I saw that, and to be honest, we keep talking about saving the Weelaunee Forest. Actually, you know as well as I do, if you've seen the pictures, that they've destroyed the trees and the forests and the animals and every other living thing in most of that area already. That's one of the things that got me to be so depressed, and it's hard to keep coming and realizing that nothing's going to change. But I think you all do have a possibility of thinking about what to use the legal methods that you can find to reverse course and to use the money that you were going to use. And please all read that Atlanta Press Collective piece that came out this morning everyone's been referring to. Please read that. I'm assuming you all kind of know about this in the first place because you've seen those emails and anything behind the scene that was happening. But if you haven't, please read it, because we're not just talking about 31 million. So I'm thinking, well, what if you did stop giving that money to the Atlanta Police Foundation, which would make it pretty impossible for them to continue building that facility? So what if we use that money, or some of it, even $1 million, like you want to build that, gym for the cops on the property? Why don't we use some of that to say, look what we've done already. We can stop. We can change that, use the money to help train young folks and people without work, maybe even some homeless folks, to rebuild that forest by starting to plant trees, by starting to rehabilitate and give some love to that land. Think of the training, the job training you might be able to do that will live in history. Atlanta not only stopped giving millions to another police training academy for a militarized police system, but it said, hey, let's instead start working with people who really have little in the city and help the people that have been chased out of the city by gentrification.
Thank you,
and
Ms.
stop
Fontana.
that from happening.
Thank you, Ms. Fontana. Your time is up. Next up is Tim Franzen, followed by Gabriela Solis, and then Heather Pincock.
Good afternoon, Council. I might have believe, or as you say, they're not using it, so y'all go ahead. Get up and move and sit over here since they're not using it. That's right. Thank you for that clarification. Right? People are free to sit right here. I do strongly encourage y'all to read the Atlanta Press Collective article. It is shocking, and it adds another layer of corruption into this funding deal. Those of you who've been on council for a long time understand the Atlanta way, probably won't be as shocked as the public is to read that there's a lot more than $33.5 million that we're going to be on the hook for this thing. At this point, this is a legacy project, one that y'all's legacy will be attached to when it comes to re-election time. I know that this is a movement that I've supported but have stayed away from. When you're doing social justice work, a lot of times you got to pick between injustices to work on. And I have chosen to work around housing for years, and I planned on having a summer of knocking on a lot of doors, organizing more complexes. We had a great impact on the last election. When a Miss Darden speaks at a community forum, it's not by accident that we have videotapes there, and it's not by accident that we're not dealing with Kasim Reed, we're dealing with Andre Dickens, and we're real good. We're real good at organizing. And I want to be doing good organizing work this summer, knocking on doors, but instead, we're going to be organizing marches, We're going to be organizing a campaign of radical Kingian nonviolence this summer. Y'all remember me with Moral Monday years back? Every Monday we were there with a group of people, with Reverend Warnock and others. I don't want to do that this summer, but I am called to conscience. And I want to read you my favorite quote whenever I'm dealing with a difficult decision. And this is really a quote. I'm not reading it to the public, I'm reading it to y'all. On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it expedient? And then expedience comes along and asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? Conscience asks the question, is it right? There comes a time when one must take the position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he or she must do it because conscience tells us that it is right, and that is y'all's challenge right now. Don't let this be your legacy. Stop Cop City.
Thank you. Next up is Gabriela Solis, followed by Heather Pincock, and then Rebecca Hill.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Gabriela. I'm a DACA recipient, an immigrant, a taxpayer. I am human. I have been in Georgia since I was 5, ever since I can remember. I have never felt safe around police, no matter how much they try to convince us in career date. But that's another story about the school to prison pipeline. When I was younger, I remember my father, who was undocumented and had no license, had to drive to buy groceries and do what normal folks do on Sundays, his only day off. And my siblings and I would be having fun, talking in the car, and then my mother would say, shh, calm down, sit still, do not bring attention to the car. There's a cop behind us. That horrible feeling, sinking feeling that my father or mother will be separated is still with me. Even though HB 87 is no longer here. Yet, my family and my communities still and always will be terrorized by police, by anti-immigration bills in Georgia. Having more militarized cops will not help our Black and brown communities because they have never made us feel safe, welcome, or protected. As a taxpayer who can't vote, do not support Cop City. And we will hold all of y'all accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Heather Pincock, followed by Rebecca Hill, and then Laura Kearns.
Hi, I'm Heather Pincock. I'm a resident of Atlanta. I'm also a union member, and I also teach young and old people as a college professor. And I'm here for the first time. I'm here in solidarity with the Stop Cop City movement that has been active for over 2 years. And I have been on the sidelines, like others have mentioned, a passive ally of this movement, but I have now been activated. Why? I have seen my neighbors give 8 hours of public comment last week against Cop City, only to see the mayor and other members of council double down on a misleading narrative about what this project is and why Atlanta needs it. And seeing these elected officials assert that their role as Democratic representatives is not to listen to or act on behalf, but to decide for their constituents has been so disappointing. You know, I teach American government at a public college in Georgia, and I tell my students that there are 2 kinds of Democratic representation. One is delegate representation. That's when representatives act in accordance with the preferences of their constituents. Makes sense, right? There is another kind of Democratic representation called trustee representation, where democratically elected representatives act in the interests of their constituents, what they perceive as the interests of their constituents, even if this goes against their preferences. And some of you have claimed to be exercising courage in doing what's best for Atlanta over and against the vocal opposition to Cop City. But courageous leadership in this situation would mean acting to defend the forest and stop Cop City. You can tell yourselves that you are doing that you are acting as good trustee representatives by deciding for the people, claiming to know what's best for them, ignoring what they are asking you to do. But when you do this, you forget another important concept of democratic representation, and that is accountability. Many people have already mentioned this. We are your constituents. We are asking you to listen to us, and we will hold you accountable. So I am here for the first time, but I will be back. And I will be canvassing. I will be talking to my neighbors. We will be activating the passive allies to act in solidarity with this movement, and we will have democratic accountability. So you have a chance now to stop Cop City and act as democratic representatives. Please do so.
Thank you. Next up, Rebecca Hill, followed by Laura Kearns, and then Diane, looks like Mathewitz.
Hello, I'm Rebecca. I also live in Atlanta, and I'm also somebody who was on the sidelines passively supporting this movement who only recently has been involved. I'm also another person who read the article about the additional $20 million that has been added to the public bill for this facility that the people of this city have expressed to you that we do not want. And every day, there are more people who are learning about this, and the more we don't want it. We're learning about it even though the Atlanta Journal and Constitution may not be reporting on it, but we're learning more about what this police training center involves, money spent on military training in this model village, money spent to clear forested land, money spent to police the land that people don't want to have developed in this way. And I've learned from local activists actually just today on the way here about other plans about what could have been done in this space, about a polluted river that could have been restored or that could still be restored if the city council and if the city government were committed to doing so. I've also noted a new emphasis on firefighters and how they will benefit from this new training facility. But why use them to put a shine on something except for the fact that it's very clear that the public doesn't want a police training facility in this space or anywhere in many cases? Why handcuff these firefighters who are more publicly popular and their training by attaching them to this militarized police training facility that we don't want? To which there is so much opposition. I think you're using, or the people who are using the firefighters as a sort of poster children for this project, no, it's because the project is unpopular. And these are all things I've just learned recently. But I've also known other things for a lot longer, which is what made me a passive ally and what had brought me here last Monday. Police training doesn't reduce police violence, as many others have said. Spending on police doesn't reduce crime. And Atlanta is already among the top 20 cities in the United States for the highest number of police per capita. That is not making us safer in this city today. Adding more training to that police force or more police or more funding for those police is not going to make us safer tomorrow or next year. It just simply creates another line item to continue spending on something that is ineffective, has proven ineffective in the past, will continue to prove ineffective, and will simply serve to add to a lack of safety and suck resources out of things that could actually make this city a better place to live.
Thank you. Next up, Laura Kearns, followed by Diane Mathewitz, and then Bruce Johnson.
Got folks running up here. All right. So good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So George Chitty published an article on February the 6th in the Decatur-ish, and the title is "Why Atlanta is Rushing to Build Cop City in DeKalb County." I'd like to quote from it. The foundation, referring to the APF, Atlanta Police Foundation, expects to generate at least $500,000 in free cash flow from operating it, according to statements made to the Atlanta City Council during the contentious arguments in 2021. That's a $3 million annual revenue program with a 16% profit margin, with which APF can do as it sees fit. This gifting of land to the APF without going through normal procurement processes of open competition and competitive bidding is unacceptable. It is just one example of how the APF has received preferential treatment and government operations that are not above board. A second quote from the Chitty article. Things one would expect a city police department to handle itself have actually been outsourced to the APF. Atlanta's crime analysis, for example, is run through the Foundation's Crime Research Center. If that entity were run through the city, I could take a close look at its operations to explore its effectiveness and potentially its biases, which is something many of us have spoken to, the biases, the problems. But the program is secreted behind the private walls of a private foundation, immune to Open Records immune to Open Records Act request. The APF is not a trusted organization. It's not using standard business practice. You all are not using standard business practices. Cop City should not receive any additional funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Diane Mathewitz, followed by Bruce Johnson, and then Daxton Pettis.
Okay, my name is Diane Mathewitz. I live in Southeast Atlanta. Yesterday was my 77th birthday.
Happy birthday.
All right, thank you very much for that. What you can give me is a decision to stop Cop City. You can do that for all of us who have lived in this city 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 plus years. And we have seen politician after politician ask for our vote, talk about the good things they'll do, and then be totally bought off by corporations like what? Georgia Power, who's increasing our bills, although they're making billions in profit, by banks that are foreclosed on us during the housing crisis. Seriously, y'all. I'm an old lady, but I tell you that like some of the other gray-haired women in this hall, we won't stop till we get stopped. And I do want to say this one more thing. I am convinced by these folks. Are you listening to the facts they're giving? Oh, I heard no. I'm hoping that you are, because this city's reputation, I want to tell you, I think one of the reasons the Democratic Convention didn't come here is because we were going to demonstrate the hell out of every event to say Cop City, and they didn't want the embarrassment of it. Now, if you don't want the embarrassment, if Georgia Power doesn't want the embarrassment, if all the universities don't want the embarrassment, the demonstrations will continue. Because even if Cop City is built, we're going to try to tear it down.
Thank you. Next up, Bruce Johnson, followed by Daxton Pettis, and then Devin Barrington Ward.
Hi, I'm Bruce Johnson. I live in the North Buckhead area. I'm in Howard Shook's district, and I have not, this is the first event I've been to in regard to opposing Cop City, but I just think it's the wrong priority for this city. We shouldn't be moving towards a militarized police force, but we should be moving towards a more of a community-based policing, not militarization. I know we've had, in my own neighborhood, for instance, we've had like 3 shootings in the last couple days, 2 at Trader Joe's on Peachtree Street, one right around the corner, at the corner of Habersham and Roswell Road where I live. None of those, we need to address gun control directly. I know it's difficult in this state right now, but that's the kind of thing that would really make a real difference in terms of reducing crime and reducing gun violence in this city, not by constructing a militarized training center in the city. And then finally, this is, as I understand it, the largest undeveloped forest land in the city limits should be developed as a park. We have much less parkland per capita than a lot of other cities. It should be developed as a park. and kept as green space. And I urge you to vote no in regard to further funding for Cop City. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, Daxton Pettis, followed by Devin Barrington Ward, and then Nate Bailey. Is Daxton Pettis still in the room? All right, Devin Barrington Ward.
We can't be in a crime wave. We can't be. There's 60 police officers sitting outside doing nothing. There's no way we're in a crime wave. We cannot be in a crime wave. Ain't no way. Ain't no way. But what we are in is a wave of escalation of tactics, a wave of intimidation by the police, because we aren't dangerous. We didn't shoot anybody in the forest. It was our friend and comrade that got gunned down in a hail of gunfire by their homies with the Georgia Highway Patrol. It wasn't us that killed anybody. So who are they really here for? What is the purpose of this display of force? I heard Councilmember Wan, even you were like, this is too much. And so this is indicative of what we will be enabling if we continue to support this Cop City project. Who is Cop City really for? Who is it to keep safe? There's not even residents from Buckhead coming down here to say that they want Cop City. So who is it for? Who is it for? Councilmember Hillis, who is it for? Is it for council members who leave their keys in the car and young people steal their cars and they end up dead? Who is it for? Because we can't be responsible about making sure that we prevent crime, which starts with us not doing silly things like leaving guns and keys in the car in a city that we know is a tale of the haves and the have-nots. But I want to talk about the financial realities because, Councilmember Wan, you're a money person, right? And so $4.8 billion in Georgia is spent on police, prisons, and jails already. Now you're talking about $51 million. We're also talking about a precedent that the mayor is now coming to you all and actually diluting the power of council because he's saying he doesn't have to explain the line items in the budget. When are you all going to step up as the legislative body and do your responsibility and push back on the mayor? Listen, we talking about $51 million, not for a hospital, not for treatment programs, not for violence interruption, not for rental assistance. Oh, you let the mayor send that back. Not for a homeless shelter, not for free mental health programs, not for a crisis center, not for 24/7 pad services, not for filling the potholes. My Jaguar would appreciate that. No money for the violence prevention programs. So I want to talk about the financial realities because they link to the political realities. And the political realities is many of you all are sitting up here real arrogant, like you won your elections by big margins. There are members of council that won their elections by 75 votes. You don't think that 300 people can't do a recall effort in your districts? Let's be clear. There will be political responsibilities that you all will bear. There will be consequences. And so you all just have to ask the question on whether or not what side of history you want to land on. Black power, power to the people, y'all.
Thank you. All right, our final speaker of the day is Nate Bailey.
Afternoon, Council. My name is Nate Bailey. I'm president of the Atlanta Professional Firefighters. I just want to speak about our support for the training center and why it's so important for us and the city. Our citizens deserve expert-level firefighters. To be experts, we must train. And if we're going to train, we have to have the facilities. And here's just a few of the many responsibilities for your Atlanta firefighters. Obviously, being a firefighter, that's 5 months of training. Paramedic, 15 months of training. And the list goes on. Hazardous materials technician, chemical, biological, radiation, nuclear explosives, rope rescue technician, confined space, trench rescue, collapse rescue. We just had a crane collapse 2 days ago on Peachtree. We don't have a high-rise tower to train in. So you know what high-rises we use? The ones on Peachtree and in Buckhead. And the tenants don't really like that too much. So we don't have anywhere to train. And the list goes on: vehicle extrication, swiftwater rescue, dive rescue, tactical EMS, active shooter. We've had multiple active shooter incidents lately. Airport and aircraft rescue, mental health response, and crisis intervention. These job duties require 2 to 3 years just to be certified. It takes continuous training and thousands of hours of hands-on training to be the best. Our citizens and visitors deserve the very best fire department. And to be the best, we must have a world-class training center. Our citizens want the best trained firefighters. Right now, we have over 200 firefighter vacancies that we can't fill because we don't have classroom space. That costs the citizens $12 million in overtime. You know, we can roll that money into other things. Some of the things that the others have, you know, spoken about and talked about, we also want more affordable housing. Firefighters are natural conservationists. I mean, some of us have almost died trying to save historic buildings. Seeing Gaines Hall burned out, you know.
All right, I'm going to ask the audience, you need to be respectful to those that are speaking. Everybody was respectful when y'all spoke, all right? So,
and
thank you.
You know, I've spent most of my life living in East Atlanta and the city, and, you know, we all have some of the same concerns, but debating over a training center shouldn't be one of them. I mean, there's a lot of debates we should be having as a city, but this isn't one of them. You know, we need the Public Safety Training Center, and
Split it off with the weeds.
I'm going to ask
I
y'all
do
to
want
be.
to say this real quick. It's not the rescues, the people we've saved that keep our firefighters up and leads to like the PTSD and the depression. It's the ones we couldn't save. It's the people that we think about that maybe if we'd have been trained just a little bit more or had the equipment. In our budget we asked for equipment. That was our number one concern, not money. Like, we just want to be the best at our job, and we have to have a training center to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment for this meeting. We'll now move on to the agenda. I have the list that was provided by when it was signed up, and that closed.
And it was before 1 p.m.
And so did this person.
Okay. All right, so. All right, so hang on. If y'all can be quiet for a second, we're going to figure out why it's not showing up in the system if you signed up. So give us a second to figure this out.
She just wants a picture.
All right, I apologize, but I'll tell you that the system is the system, and the last speaker. Hang on a second.
I was here before 1 p.m. today. I signed up in the computer. They told me to.
Okay, hold on a second.
So that's not my problem. You guys need to fix your system. You cut me off last time. You just don't want to hear me. You will hear me today. Go into the computer and find my name. Sit one of your people.
And this person's.
So did I.
So you signed up in committee room 1.
Yes.
So did this person.
All right, so let me get a show of hands real quick of folks that said you signed up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I don't know what's going on because we can't get access to, but let's do can we do a written sign-up sheet for these 4?
No, it's.
Okay, so
said 5.
if the four of y'all will come line up, we're just going to put a piece of paper at the end of the banister. We're going to have you.
That's what I'm trying to say.
So we're going to accommodate y'all. My apologies again. I'm just going by what our system does, but we're going to accommodate y'all. So if you will, go ahead, since you're up there, say your name. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. We'll just make sure you sign, and then we'll go for the other 3.
Yes,
so
sir.
You have
Thank
the floor.
My name is J.J. Jordan. My grandmother was a sharecropper down yonder in Talbot County, and I am a PhD student in economics at Georgia State University. I am the only Black female PhD econ student that school has ever had. So first, let me bring you some data because that's what I like a lot. Mayor Dickens a black mayor. He talks a lot, but I'm not sure how much he reads. I'm not sure if he's read Carter Woodson, who was the first black man to have a PhD who was not a free man. The first one was W.E.B. Du Bois. The second one was Carter Woodson, the only black man to have a PhD whose parents were slaves. He says that the attitude of the black man, the educated black man, is to have contempt for his own people. For in their schools and also in the mixed schools, they're taught to value the Roman, the Greek, but to despise the African. And so for all the educated black people who sit on this board and who are mayors and et cetera, I want to let you know that this city of Atlanta, under a black leadership, has gone from in 1991, which had 61% black people, till now, let me get the numbers to be right, in 2020, the new census says it's now at 46%, and it continues to decrease with gentrification. I also want to bring to you one other study that was published just this year in the economic journal called Economic Journal of Behavioral Science, which talks about gentrification, and it shows that in cities that are gentrified, violence increases to the neighborhoods, surrounding neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods themselves. Violence increases and crime increases up to at least 8%, and these are conservative measurements. So for all these educated black people who have contempt for your own people, sir, I want to let you know that we are here and we are trying to do things for our own communities, to save our own communities, and to help our own communities. My grandmother died at 64, okay, and she would be turning in her grave right now to see me having to stand here to talk to you people, to tell you to stop bringing violence to our communities. If you want to go into if you want to be a part of your white communities, if you want to go there and stand there and yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, you go ahead, have yourself a good time. Have yourself a good time doing that. Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Keep going ahead, have fun, have a good time. We are here to tell you to stop Cop City. You won't be allowed at the cookout this year.
All right, as soon as I get the sheet, I'll call off the other three names, and then we'll. Thank you. All right, next up I have, it looks like Kat Maddox.
Thanks for a warm welcome to City Hall, by the way. I think there's at least one officer for each of us here, maybe two. You can tell the mayor from me that while his intimidation tactics may work on his council members, vote for Cop City or else, I couldn't be any less impressed. The state-sponsored part against the will of the people kind of takes the whole thrill out of the mobbed up feeling. And that is how they feel, believe me. I was at the Publix last night, and when I tried to intervene in a police altercation between a man who had been tackled by the cops for stealing a box of Captain Crunch treats and who was screaming for help by saying, hey, I'll pay for it, was told that I couldn't because he had been caught stealing in the previous days before. I don't know if anyone on this council has ever known the type of hunger that would drive you to steal, but surely you understand people get hungry every day. One of the multiple cops that were called to take this pitiful man to jail told me that during my efforts to intervene that I was, and I quote, messing with my life and messing with my freedom. You know, any attempt to advocate for my community is really starting to feel that way. But if that's the consequences I am to bear for not letting a weasel like Andre Dickens mess with me, then so be it. If he wants to continue this hellish dance in the pale moonlight, then we are going to be right here holding his hand. I was so shaken after the grocery last night, I contacted a friend who told me that earlier yesterday she was in the Little Five Points and saw a half-naked man who was clearly suffering a mental health episode thrown into the back of a cop car. The system is imploding, and all Cop City will do is throw an atom bomb on top of the blood, the anguish, and the horrific history, the writing of which, whether we like it or not, you have been entrusted with. Our mental health and housing needs exceed any anecdotal evidence about my day yesterday in Atlanta. If you don't believe me, believe the Solicitor General, who said at our last post-seat holder meeting that LaShawn Thompson shouldn't have even been arrested, and that what he needs is more money for deferment programs. That is, if the GOP doesn't have him kicked out of office for refusing to prosecute abortions with their new prosecutorial oversight committee. I know reproductive justice is one thing most of you all aren't afraid to stand up for still. Are you aware then that one of the tenets of the reproductive justice movement, co-founded by our forever representative, Abel Mabel Thomas, shout out to her, is the right to parent the children we have in a safe and sustainable environment? Where is the reproductive justice for Belkis Tehran, for LaShawn Thompson's mother? Jimmy Atchison's mother died because having your child massacred is not something people are supposed to withstand.
All right,
We
thank you.
say no more!
Thank you.
And we echo the call of Oscar Kane from
All right,
Beyond
thank
the Grave,
you. Your time is
who before
concluded.
being shot by the police and killed during the
Ms. Maddox,
2020
your time is
protests
concluded.
said
Your
to the
time
people,
has
I am
concluded.
somebody, and
All right. We're good. All right, thank you. All right, Maceo Fletcher, followed by Christy York. Maceo.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Maceo Fletcher, formerly Maceo Williams. I spent 5.5 years on the Citizens Review Board here, defending citizens. I come out your district, District 1. I've been dealing with this board ever since Maynard Jackson. I was Julian Bond's intern. I've been off the board for 7 years now, maybe 8 years now, maybe when you first got here. And when Hillis first got here from Felicia. About 7, 8 years ago, we asked for more money for the Citizen Review Board. Brother Shook over there didn't want to get the money up. I stood up about that. I've been sitting idly quiet for the last few years, just absorbing and taking in and monitoring. Because everybody has a right, whether they're public safety or they're citizens. But at the end, when the public safety get off, they citizens too somewhere, ain't they? When the policeman take off his uniform, he's just a black man. I want to monitor this situation, and I'd like to ask to be put on the board of this particular project, because in the past, I see and listen to everything that happened today. I see it needs more guidance and direction and experience. I'm a guy who deals with action, whether it's with Rainbow, whether with NAACP, whether it was with Reverend Joseph Lowry, which y'all might have seen me with in the past. The bottom line is action needs to happen. I was there when the verdict came down for the officer who killed Anthony Hill, the naked veteran. I'm a veteran. And talking about veterans, I know you hire veterans straight out the service, and they come out to shoot to kill, because that's what they're being trained, to shoot to kill. But what happened to shooting the lame? What happened to shooting my fellow citizens in the leg, in the shoulder, not in the heart? So let me help you do this situation, and I'm going to still be monitoring it, okay?
All right, thank you,
Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Next up, Christy York, followed by Reverend Diane Doherty.
So I went to Georgia Southern, and when I was there, one of my professors, he was my economic professor, was Dr. Barilla, and he was over the national GDP at one time for the White House. So he was very familiar with budgeting, which is what you all are here to do. And most of us are here today hoping that you will be with us in opposition of item 523-0-1257. Dr. Barilla instilled a lot of knowledge into me when I was his student, but one thing he always said was that desperation perpetuates crime. Crime will happen when people are desperate. So how do we prevent crime? We educate people. We provide mental health preparedness. We help people. We house people. We provide affordable housing. We provide childcare. We provide incentive for people to do community work. We have this whole forest. We could have a co-op, literally, to provide food. We could have forests and trees. I know that that's in the works to have fruit trees and things. I think that was a thing I read about. But we could do so much more with this money and with this space and with this time and with this energy. And this firefighter who just spoke, we're not opposed to giving firefighters equipment. We're all in favor of that as well. That's not a problem, but there's so many abandoned buildings in Atlanta that could also be used. I know for a fact that the Madison and EAV has been empty for more decades than it has been in use, and that is an old theater. That is a perfect place for firefighters to train. It's huge, it's unoccupied. There's so many places like that in Atlanta, and if y'all can get creative, we damn sure can. We have provided y'all with endless instances and examples of ways to use this money, of ways to help the people, but y'all are not Dr. Barilla. Y'all have not worked for the White House. Y'all are a little in over your head, but I promise you, my professor was right. When people are desperate, they do crime. And like so many other people here today, we're talking about a lady outside urinating. We have migrants here. We have refugees here. We have houseless here. There are people to help here. And I just believe that Cop City, like I said last week, I was the one who said, I believe we are at war with police. And I believe that because I know you train them with Jilly, like the Israeli forces. I know that to be true. And I've traveled other continents. I've went to third world countries, first world countries. My first study abroad trip was international relations. I know how this works. I'm not stupid, I'm not blind, and neither is anyone here. When I called a few months ago to ask the mayor for de-escalation prior to the police murdering of Tort, the mayor's secretary mocked me and condescendingly told me that we should have showed up before the papers were signed.
Thank you, Ms.
We
York.
did show up.
Thank you, Ms.
And
York.
we're
Your
back,
time is concluded.
and we won't stop.
Thank you. All right, Reverend Diane Doherty, you're our final speaker for the day.
Thank you for this very long and inviting conversation. I hope you're all woke enough to hear me after so many comments. I'm so glad to be able to give this an opportunity, be here and have the opportunity to speak to you, because I believe this is a moral issue, a historical issue, and it will be written about in the history books to come. You are the participants that will be the leaders of that moment in history. Funding this initiative terrifies me personally because historically it's a reinvention of an age-old model of using taxes to control populations. Make no mistake. There's no restrictions or no regulation. The other terrifying aspect of this is the long-term, is that it will be long-term if it gets off the ground. It'll be a model for large cities throughout the United States to use against minorities or those who are unwelcomed, coupled with new, scary bills passed by the Georgia House to prosecute prosecutors. The future of democracy in Georgia doesn't look very good. To me, this is a short-sighted plan, as well as a morphed version of the oppressive Jim Crow laws, voted in incrementally by the very group whose ancestors oppressed and were oppressed by them. It doesn't make sense if we're the city of brotherly love. Institutionalizing something like Cop City stands as a blatant disregard of the right of people to be protected. We've heard about this, not just the wealthy, but the wealthy will be recipients of the forceful hand of these officers, believe me. In this case, minorities will be whisked off their properties and streets under the auspices of city ordinances, and those who don't comply, well-trained Cop City officers will provide a last solution. History will repeat itself. We do not want this. We have not witnessed urban warfare that would be coming to rid the city of the unwanted and those made poor who have no resource to challenge these laws. Why is this even being considered? To make a place for the moneyed elite to fill up high-priced apartments downtown?
Thank you, Ms. Reverend.
Thank you all so much for your attention.
Thank you. All right, with that, we're concluded with public comment. We'll now move into our agenda. First item is under the consent agenda, ordinances for first reading. Ms. Lindo, can I have you sound the two items, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first item is 2030-1281. This is an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to amend certain fiscal year 2023 budgets and transfer funds from the Emergency Telephone System Fund, Water and Wastewater Revenue Fund, Solid Waste Services Revenue Fund, Internal Service Fund, Airport Revenue Fund, and General Fund to the Group Insurance Fund to reduce the accumulated Group Insurance Fund deficit as of June 30th, 2022, and starting fiscal year 2023 and each year thereafter, and allocate all future Group Insurance Fund surpluses and deficits to the Emergency Telephone System Fund, Water and Sewers Revenue Fund, Solid Waste Services Revenue Fund, Airport Revenue Fund, Internal Service Fund, and General Fund by each year end for the purpose of making necessary adjustments and for other purposes. Item number 2 is 2030-1282. This is an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to execute all documents necessary to donate approximately 3,851.51 square feet of land, more or less, located along Lee Street Southwest between Tucker Avenue Southwest and White Street Southwest in Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia, land lot listed herein, with tax parcel identification number listed herein, along with 3 other parcels, and grant of an easement as described and depicted in Exhibit A, hereto attached to the Georgia Department of Transportation for the installation and maintenance of its traffic signal improvement projects, waiving any conflicting provisions of Article 10, Division 14, subsection 3 of the Atlanta City Code, and for other purposes.
Thank you, Ms. Lindo. Now that those have been sounded, we'll receive them in and address them during our next meeting cycle. That takes us to G, ordinances for second reading. First item up is 23-01239, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the Chief Financial Officer or his designee to amend the FY 2023 Department of City Planning General Fund budget and the FY 2023 Capital Finance Fund budget by transferring an amount not to exceed $612,500.00 by anticipating and appropriating funds to and from the accounts listed herein for the purpose of continuing comprehensive planning services for the 2026 Comprehensive Development Plan and for other purposes. Mr. Young, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Doug Young, Director of the Office of Design, and the office is responsible for the implementation of the city's comprehensive planning services. As the ordinance states, this is to reserve our funds for Phase 2 of the CDP work. We are wrapping up Phase 1 of that work, and we anticipate Phase 2 launching this summer and fall. And these funds will allow us to proceed with that work and continue updating the CDP.
All right, questions from my colleagues or a motion? There's a motion from Shook, seconded by Hillis. If there's no further discussion, let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. One moment. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. The item is approved. Next item is 23-01240. Colleagues, there is a substitute for this that changes the caption. I'll read in the new caption and make the motion to bring it forward. This is a substitute ordinance by Finance Executive Committee to ratify services rendered in connection with agreement number listed, insurance brokerage and consulting services with USI Insurance Services, LLC, beginning March 17, 2023, and to authorize the mayor or his designee to execute the Fourth Amendment to the agreement on behalf of the Department of Finance, retroactively effective from March 17, 2023, on a month-to-month basis for a period not to exceed 12 months, in the amount of $17,500.00 per month and not to exceed the amount of $210,000.00. All contracted work to be charged to and paid from the fund, department, organization, and account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. The substitute revises the caption and corrects to reflect that this is amendment number 4. I'll move to bring it forward. Seconded by Shook. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is before us. I have Mr. Deloach down as speaking to this. Yes, there you are. Please, please tell us about this paper.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Jerry Deloach, Chief Risk Officer for the City of Atlanta out of the Department of Finance. The piece of legislation before you this afternoon is seeking a month-to-month extension of a current contract we have with USI, FC 8100A. Just for informational purposes, we have completed the RFP process. The scoring has taken place. We expect this month-to-month to last for an additional 90 days at the most, but the process has been completed, and we're just waiting on the final stages.
All right, any questions for Mr. Deloach? Motion from Shook to approve on substitute, seconded by Hillis. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item is approved on substitute. The next item is 23. Thank you, Mr. Deloach. The next item is 23-01257. Colleagues, there is a substitute for this, but it does not change the caption. I'll read it in and make the motion. It is an ordinance by council members Hillis, Amos, Collier Overstreet, Shook, Westmoreland, and Norwood, as substituted by Finance Executive Committee, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to amend the fiscal year 2023 general fund budget to transfer and allocate an amount not to exceed $30 million in funds from the uncommitted general fund balance to support the continued construction of and improvements to the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, also known as the project. 2, authorizing the mayor or his designee and or the chief financial officer to use public safety impact fees in an amount not to exceed $1 million for the purpose of funding the installation of a gymnasium facility to be located on the site of the project. And 3, waiving Section 2-1546 of Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to authorize the mayor or his designee to enter into a leaseback agreement or other applicable agreement with the Atlanta Police Foundation and for other purposes. I'll move to bring the substitute forward. Seconded by Shook. Let's open that vote, please. Thank you.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is before us. Mr. Ball. Now, all we did was bring the substitute forward.
Guys, it's just a substitute. It's not a yes on the legislation.
Okay.
It's just a substitute.
So here are the rules of engagement in here, all right? We have business to conduct. You had your opportunity to speak. If we find that y'all are disrupting the proceedings and our deliberations of this, we will recess. you've got to let us do our work and have the conversation, but just please work with us on this one. So CFO Wall, I'm going to turn to you to walk us through this paper, please.
Good afternoon, Mohammed Bala, Chief Financial Officer. The legislation before you is in accordance with 21-R4320 adopted by City Council on December 6, 2021. That legislation authorized the CFO to identify the optimal funding sources for the construction and improvements of the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. The legislation in front of you authorizes $31 million for the project costs that are anticipated to be $90 million. It allows the city to utilize fund balance in an amount of $30 million and also utilize $1 million from the public safety impact fees for the construction of a gymnasium on that property. The legislation also allows the CFO the option to enter into a financing agreement to replenish fund balance for that $30 million that was utilized within specific parameters, not to exceed 30 years or 6.5% interest, which is in line with the current market conditions. That essentially gives the CFO the flexibility to replenish the fund balance that is being utilized today for other critical needs of the city if that was to be executed. The substitute just says that if that was to be executed, that the CFO would come in front of City Council and present that construct.
All right, are there questions for the CFO? Yeah, I have a series of questions, and then Councilmember Bakhtiari. Okay, I've got a series of questions on 3 different buckets. The first one has to do with organizational structure of the project, the second has to do with financial, and the third has to do with governance. So I'll start with the first. I need to understand on this one the organizational structure of the project. Who ultimately is the owner of the project? And if that is not the foundation, what is their legal or technical role in this, both during construction and then post-construction?
I'll answer that, and also LaShondra Burks is here to weigh in as well. So the owner of the project is the City of Atlanta. The city will own and operate and dictate the project and the facility at all times. The foundation's role here is a funding mechanism and is raising $33.4 million in donations, as well as it being the catalyst for a loan that they are taking in the amount of $20.8 million and new market tax credits in the amount of $5 million. The city's contribution is that $31 million to the overall project costs, and the project costs are estimated to be hard costs of $83 million and soft costs that include engineering, design, environmental sustainability assessments of roughly $6.3 million. So in total, this is the construct of the financing mechanism. From an operational perspective, I'll let the administration answer that question.
Well, before we get to Ms. Burks, so let me understand. The city is the owner of the property. The foundation simply is a fundraising conduit. Now,
Correct.
do they hold the contracts for the construction, design, all the costs that you mentioned?
Yes.
It is in their name.
Yes.
And then the funds that we are talking about would go to the foundation?
The funds would go to the foundation to pay the contractor, Brassfield Gorey, who has a contract with the Atlanta Police Foundation.
Okay, and then post-construction, with the leaseback, they are essentially the lessor of a building they don't own?
Yes, the Atlanta Police Foundation is underwriting a loan in the Police Foundation's name for $21 million. That is a loan of the Police Foundation, not the City of Atlanta.
Okay, so, but the lease back that's contemplated in this paper also goes to maintenance and operational of the...
Correct. The lease back is in accordance with 21-00367 that was adopted by City Council on September 7th, 2021. And those costs right now will be cost neutral to the city. We are fortunate that those operational payments, like I mentioned, will be cost neutral because we are currently paying $1.4 million roughly in lesser substandard facilities. So from a budgetary perspective, that is a neutral budget item for the city of Atlanta.
The legislation you just mentioned, it actually outlines the specific services that the APF will be providing to the city in return as part of that leaseback agreement. And it includes operational maintenance as well as the debt that they're taking out.
Correct.
Okay, so is Ms. Burks here? If you can follow up with the other questions regarding kind of I guess the financial piece, both particularly the cost piece, because I think CFO Bala explained the capital stack for the $90 million project.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Mr. Chair and members of the Finance Committee. I was walking over and did not hear the question. Could you repeat it for me, please?
Sure. Well, I didn't know if there was another question that you had wanted. I'm going to get into kind of the construction budget side. He's talked about the capital stack, but I want to understand the project budget stack, if there's a word for that. Like how much to get to the $90 million, what's soft cost, what's actual construction?
I actually have that in front of me right now, and I could provide that to you.
Okay.
So for site improvements, it's roughly $23.8 million. The building construction is $50.2 million. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment's at $9.7 million. And then the soft costs are $6.3 million, and that comprises of engineering design at $4.5 million, environmental sustainability assessments at $1.4 million, municipal fees and other fees at roughly $480,000.
Okay, and this is all being managed by the foundation. If there's overages, that's the responsibility of the foundation as well, correct?
Yes, the city's commitment right now is the funding that's in front of you.
Okay, all right. So I guess that answers my financial questions. In terms of the governance piece, though, essentially the foundation is driving this project. And right now, in terms of the coordination with the city, only really rests with what mechanism?
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, LaShondra Burks, Deputy Chief Operating Officer. And so, as you mentioned, the foundation is leading the efforts around the construction of the facility. However, our Department of Enterprise Asset Management is extremely involved in some of the oversight around making sure that that we're meeting all of the requirements as set aside. And I can tell you there was extensive work with members of the police department and the fire department around design, making sure that it included all of the things that we needed. But the Department of Enterprise Asset Management is also working closely with their development team.
And then going forward, in terms of operations, what's the kind of coordination mechanism at that point with our public safety departments? I'm assuming that we are going to be responsible for actual programming there, but the foundation is simply there to maintain the building. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And as it relates to the programming piece, we have had conversations because, as you may remember, as a part of the Community Stakeholder Advisory Council, there were several recommendations around community access and use to the facilities, around having a community room, places where they could hold their homeowners association meetings and host other community events. And so we will have a joint person between police and fire who will be working as kind of like a facility manager, almost like we manage our recreation centers, to handle all of the scheduling for those events and programs.
Okay, that's helpful. This is the final is really just a comment, though. I will say part of the I'd say concern that I have in terms of the relationship between the city as well as the foundation does lie with governance. And we have relationships with other nonprofit groups, for example, the Piedmont Park Conservancy or even the Center for Civil and Human Rights, where the city has invested significant amount of resources in there, both time and financial. But at the same time, we also have emeritus positions on their boards to make sure that there is transparency, accountability, and just, we're elected here, and we are answerable, as you've seen today, to the people. So I just raised that hopefully that's something that we need to and can address going forward as a way to improve that relationship and be more transparent.
We will certainly have those conversations.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Those are my questions for now. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Bakhtiari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, DCO Burke. So I'm sorry, I cannot see you very well. I'm going to try to, if you see me squatting like this, because I'm trying to make eye contact with you. Thank you for being here. Just kind of piggybacking off of this, I know that I want to also thank you for always making yourself available for my questions. I do deeply appreciate it. I know there's no mystery about where I stand on this issue. I'm going to try to ask more questions around accountability. The piece that I am concerned about with APF, piggybacking off of what the chair has said, is the piece that my district has brought to me several times, and I want to do my due diligence for them to bring this up here, is the accountability piece and the answering piece. I know that I pushed for legislation to try to get them to do a quarterly report, because one of the issues that we had is the lack of on the record or abiding by the Open Records Act, but because they're a nonprofit, they seem to have a loophole there, so making sure that we follow through with that piece. I do want to echo the need to have someone on that board from the city, because as of right now, the appearance to my community, to my district, is their concern around policing is it's reflective in the board and who is there, which right now are a lot of corporations that are not accessible to the public. And we need to be accountable and accessible to them. So would we have a time frame on when we could hear a response back on the questions that the chair has brought up today?
Sure. We will, we're more than happy to make the outreach and have the conversation and follow up as quickly as we possibly can. I don't want to give a commitment, because there may be some things on their end that they need to do as well, but we will follow up and stay on it and get a response back as quickly as possible.
Thank you. I do want to stress that that our presence for this project, we don't need to be present for every, I know they do other things around the city. I do want to ask, and this may not be a question for you, Deputy COO, it might be a question for finance. I do want to ask about the breakdown of funding. I believe we said, you broke down the new market tax credits, the 31 million we are giving, the 33.5 that APF has raised, the $20 million lease back. CFO, am I correct in saying that's 1.2 million for 30 years at 36 million?
So if you're referring to 21-00367, that is the case, but that is to be offset by the current lease payments that the city is making to other facilities. So it's the budgetary impacts are neutral to slightly positive for the city.
The additional 16, understood, the additional 16 million on top of that, because 36 versus 20 is a bit of a disconnect, and it was put in that paper today. I do want to address this. So the additional 16 million, what will that be going towards?
No, you're talking about the terms of an operational lease.
Okay.
The terms of an operational lease have a time parameter to them and an annual operating lease structure to it. So it's not necessarily there as a direct conduit for whatever APF loan is taking, but it is a rental agreement essentially that the city has authorized to enter into with Atlanta Police Foundation, and that is that $1.2 million a year. Again, that is fully offset by current payments that the city is making.
Okay. And do we have an outline of what the 33.5 philanthropic dollars versus the 31 that we have raised is going towards? Do we have an outline of specifically of where those dollars will be, what they will be designated to?
An outline of when our 31 will be allocated to?
And specifically what it will be allocated to?
Yeah, I mean, it's allocated to the entire project, and I just broke down the hard costs and the soft costs. So it's going towards the construction, the site improvements, furniture and equipment, as well as soft costs that include engineering and design fees. That is our portion from the capital stack, is $31 million.
Okay, and I'm curious, I know that I wanted to also outline this. In some of the initial pieces, even before I came onto council, it was said that this phase would include a 911 center. Are we not, this has not been, we're saying now that that's not confirmed, and if that is the case, will additional funds be coming up? Will we be asked to put in more funds into this project? Because I don't see how we could ever do that.
So with the funding for E911 Center, if you recall, that cost was allocated in the Moving Atlanta Forward infrastructure bond. That was segmented out. With regards to timing and implementation of
Okay.
E911 Center, I'll let administration take that.
So for clarification, it wouldn't be additional funding for this project. You're saying that the dollars already exist within the bond?
Yes, so the most recent infrastructure bond, Moving Atlanta Forward bond that was passed, as you may remember, one of the line items was the $15 million for an E911 center.
Okay.
It was not described as to where it would go,
Got it.
but definitely the money for a new center.
I just wanted to make sure that we had that, so that there's been a lot of confusion. I wanted to make sure that we answered that. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
I do want to ask a couple other questions that have been brought to me by concerned constituents. For example, the track that we will be having in place. Can we elaborate on why this is needed if APD is not allowed to do pursuits within city limits?
So, thank you, Councilmember Bakhtiari. I assume you're referring to the Emergency Vehicle Operations Course. So that will be used for both police and fire. And we've also talked about, as we have worked to look at some of our legal cases around accidents, possibly including Department of Watershed Management, as well as Public Works into the schedule if we can. So I want to be very clear. So the EVOC course is not that you're learning pursuits. It is actually you're learning how to move police vehicles and fire vehicles. So right now, the state requires that you do use an emergency vehicle operations course in order to learn how to drive. Right now, Atlanta Police Department is traveling an hour and a half away to use a state facility for that. And for our firefighters, they are currently learning how to drive fire trucks at night on city streets. And what we have heard also from our police officers, not just for recruits, but from our police officers, many of them have not been on a vehicle obstacle course since they were recruits. And what we can do to train them more on an annual basis is the reason for the emergency vehicle operations course.
Understood. Thank you. And may I ask, I do want to raise the question that everyone has been asking, will others be utilizing this facility outside of the city of Atlanta?
At this time, we have not formed an agreement with any others. Again, we have talked about possibly using some other departments within the city. No agreements have been formed at this time. We're just trying to work to really make hard to make sure that our police and our firefighters have an opportunity to have somewhere to train at times that work for us. Now, is that a possibility for the future? Probably. No discussions have been made, no contracts have been agreed upon at this time. We are really focused on getting in and getting this built for City of Atlanta, police and firefighters, which represent the largest public safety institutions in the state of Georgia.
Okay. And I know I have many. Other question is also, what guarantee do we have? We have promised that we are also going to be, that this is going to be built, but there's also a park. The guarantee of a park being built and a green space being guaranteed, can we elaborate on that as well?
Sure. So I think there are two components to that. The first component to the green space is when you look at the plans for the Public Safety Training Center, of the 85 acres, 30-plus acres will remain green space. I think that's the first piece that we want to talk about. In addition to that, there will be public access on the Public Safety Training Center site for residents to use walking trails, and that was a part of the Community Stakeholder Advisory Group, better known as CSAC, as a part of their recommendations to make sure that the public still had access to some of the green space. So when you enter in the areas where the kennels, the dog kennels will be, as well as the horse stables, all of those spaces will be open to the public, as well as some walking trails around some beautiful ponds that are there. There are some kind of natural trails there now. So that's one piece. There will still be green space and access to the public, even on the 85 acres. Now, you may have heard, let's talk about the other acreage that remains. And you may be aware of the mayor has put together a stakeholder advisory group, specifically called the South River Forest and Public Safety Training Center Task Force. That task force is broken up into 4 categories to look at access to space on the current 85 acres, and what do we do with the rest of the acreage? There are 4 subgroups. One is on police, fire, and E911 curriculum, looking at that, making recommendations. The second is around the former prison farm site, and how do we revision and memorialize that, getting recommendations on those. The third one is around parks and green space. As it relates to what do we do, and very reputable people on these committees, what do we do in order to maintain this property as a green space, as was outlined in the original legislation? And the fourth one is Sustainability and Resilience Task Force. They're looking at the sustainability and resilience on the 85 acres, LEED certification, solar panels, what can we do to make sure that we're meeting those standards, but also on the remaining of the acreage. So those are the 4 task groups that will come back with recommendations. We're hoping July, first part of August. But the green parks and green space, very specifically to what you're speaking to, is the subgroup that is working on what you just described.
Okay. I appreciate the clarification. And that concludes my questions. I do just want to say quickly for the record is that we've heard a lot of pain these last few weeks, these last few months, these last few years. Democracy is an incredibly fragile thing, and when I hear the community say that they feel helpless, it worries me, because when people feel helpless, they take law and order and life into their own hands, and the very thing we claim to want to prevent, we create. So I hope that, you all know where I stand on this, but I will be pushing, and I know that we will all push to continue putting the same commitments that we see into this, into fighting food apartheids, into youth development, to other things to prevent the need from having to arrest or lock anyone up. So I will say that, and DCO Burks, I really do appreciate your clarity. I have said all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bakhtiari. Councilmember Winston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Burks, while we have you up here, I wanted to know if you could provide more clarity around the Mock City and whether or not this will be shared, space for Atlanta Fire and Rescue as well as the police department for use at the facility. Because I know this has been something that we've gotten a lot of, questions about in terms of the use of that.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Winston, for that question. And so I know a lot of people call it Mock City. I like to call it a simulator. Because that's kind of what it is. So as you think about an airplane pilot who, before they fly an airplane, they actually have an opportunity to go into a simulator to train before they're put out. Their first flight technically is not flying us. And this is the same thing. So what we will have on the site are simulator buildings that kind of show some spaces that police and fire respond to. So there will be a house. There will be a club, there will be like a restaurant, and maybe like a motel apartment building. So those are pretty much the 4 situations that they respond to. So they give them an opportunity to have a chance to go in, use their response tactics in a simulator versus it being on your first 911 call. And I will say we have seen perfect examples of that. Recently, just within the last month here in Atlanta, in Midtown alone, with our mass shooting where police and fire had to respond together. It took police getting our firefighters into that building safely. Another instance was just this week where we had the crane, where the fire department had to take the lead but needed the support of the police department in order to make sure that the workers on that site were safe. And so this gives the simulator on the site, gives our police and firefighters an opportunity to train together. Their training has been disjointed internally as well as disjointed together, because they've never been in the same places for their training. They're still not in the same places for their training, even though we are renting facilities. We have not been able to find a facility large enough to rent in order for them to train together. So those simulator buildings, again, will be an opportunity for our police and firefighters, our first responders, to use those before they answer their first 911 call live.
And I know there's been a lot of questions about public access to the old prison farm. Can you talk about where that space lies and what the future use of that looks like?
Sure, that's one of the subgroups for the Mayor's Public Safety Training Center Task Force in South River Forest. It is around revisioning and repurposing of the former prison farm site. There are, most recently at one of the subgroup meetings, there were presentations from the Atlanta History Center, as well as Doug Blackman, who wrote Slavery by Another Name, and really giving the history of the site, because sometimes that definitely leads to how we honor, recognize, vision, and memorialize at that particular site. We want to know all the sensitivities of the site so that whatever is put there is not offensive to those who had to serve there. So we will have recommendations from that group coming out soon.
And then just because Zoo Atlanta is in my district, I get a lot of questions from some of my constituents about burial grounds of former zoo animals. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that. I know that there is a known fact that there are some out there, and about the specific areas that they're located.
Sure, so the only one we know for sure at this point, according to the Atlanta Zoo, is Willie B's grandfather is buried there. And it is along Key Road on the opposite end of where we are developing, very close to the former prison farm site, all the way at the very beginning of the entrance to that. We have marked that space just to be on the safe side. There's no development anywhere near that side. It's not a part of the 85. It's actually on the far end, closer as you're getting down towards Entrenchment Creek. But we have worked with the Atlanta Zoo to mark that particular location, and we hope that at some point we'll be able to do something to memorialize it as well.
Thank you. And then last question is for CFO. I know that, you kind of touched on it, but there's been a lot of questions about the city's financial obligation here. As the paper outlines, it's $30 million plus the one from the impact fee. You stated earlier, but just want to make sure that I'm understanding that that would be the city's only financial impact here, or obligation, I should say.
That's the city's contribution to the capital stack, yes, for the construction of the mechanism. There are operational annual payments that are currently being made by the city and other facilities. The city will stop making those payments and will, in turn, pay a commensurate amount for this facility as well. So from a budgetary impact, that is a neutral financial transaction for the city of Atlanta.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield my time.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Bakhtiari.
Just one clarification. It is important that, I'm glad that you noted Willie B's grandfather. I do want to note that we should also be honoring lives that were lost at this location, similar to what we're doing at Chattahoochee Brick. DCOO, could you also speak to what will happen if bodies are uncovered while doing any construction at this site?
Well, it is my understanding that if there are bodies, first of all, I haven't.
Yeah, I know that there has
been
been none, there's been no
that there are
confirmations.
bodies there.
Correct.
But I can tell you that even some of the rumors that we may have heard about the possibility, it is nowhere near the 85 acres. And so as you think about it, from the former prison farm site and how far it is from, and it's basically separated by a Georgia Power easement. So if you're facing the property on Key, to the left of the easement is where the former prison farm site is located, as well as some additional green space. To the right of the easement, far to the right of the easement, is where we are building the Public Safety Training Center.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for the CFO or the Deputy COO? All right, seeing none. All right, there's a motion from Hillis to approve on substitute. Is there a second? Seconded by Shook. If there's no further sorry? Minor clarification? Councilmember Woods asked that question. Yeah, so it is just the $30 million, $1 million impact fees, and then the leaseback payments is all that is authorized by this paper. All right, if there's no further discussion, then we're ready to open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
5 yeas, 1 nay, 1 abstention. The motion carries. This item is approved on substitute. All right, the next item is number 6, 23-01265, an ordinance by Councilmember Jason H. Winston waiving Article 10, Division 4 of the Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to authorize the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to enter into a promotional agreement with the Metropolitan Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, Inc., for the provision of promotional and marketing activities for a term of 1 year in an amount not to exceed $250,000.00. All contracted services shall be charged to and paid from the accounts listed herein and for other purposes. I understand from the author that we are filing this paper. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're going to.
All right,
So I'll make a motion to file.
motion from Winston to file, seconded by Hillis. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item will be filed. Next item is 23-01271, an ordinance by Councilmember Alex Wan to amend the charter of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, 1996, Georgia laws, page 4469, et seq., adopted under and by virtue of the authority of the Municipal Home Rule Act of 1965, OCGA, Section 36351, et seq., as amended by amending Part 1, Charter and Related Laws, Subpart A, Charter, Article 2, Legislative, Chapter 3, Organization, Rules, Officers, and Employees, Section 2-308, Staff of Council and President of the Council to standardize and define classifications for City Council employees and to update annual appropriations for salaries and benefits, to amend Chapter 2, Article 2, Division 4, Section 2-152 to reflect the actions of this charter amendment and for other purposes. All right, colleagues, this is a paper that we've been working on jointly with Committee on Council as well as the Council Director. What we're aiming to do is to clarify council staff positions, specifically around full-time and part-time status, to make sure that we are in compliance with federal employment law as well as just being consistent as possible with kind of the city's employment practices. What this also comes with is most of us have staff that are full-time or should be considered full-time employees, and as such, there is additional funding available to provide benefits for up to 2 employees to make sure that, as we are entering into compliance, that we are properly funded and resourced to do so. This is, I'll be honest with you, this is still being crafted between the council director as well as the law department and HR. I'm going to ask that we move this forward to Committee on Council with no recommendation, as it needs, actually, no, do we need to approve this? Do we need to approve this, or can we move it forward with no recommendation? To continue on, this is a charter amendment, so it's going to need a certain number of reads. The caption will accommodate the finessing. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone might have. All right, I'll make the motion to move it forward with no recommendation. It's been seconded by Hillis. Any other discussion? All right, let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item will be forwarded with no recommendation to Committee on Council. That takes us to resolutions. First item is 23-R3623. There is a substitute for this that changes the caption by inserting the dollar amount. I'll read it in and make the motion. It is a resolution by Councilmember Alex Wan, as substituted by Finance Executive Committee, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to refund customers for overpayments to water and sewer accounts in an amount of $150,041.69. All funds to be charged to and paid from fund, department, organization, and account numbers listed and for other purposes. Move to bring the substitute forward. Seconded by Shook. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The item is approved on wait, no, the substitute is before us. All right. This is pretty standard fare. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve on substitute, seconded by Shook. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. This item is approved on substitute. Next item is 23-R3624. This does have a substitute that revises the caption. I'll read in that and make the motion. It's a resolution by council members Faroki, Dozier, Bakhtiari, Wan, Shook, Norwood, Collier Overstreet, Bond, and Westmoreland, as substituted by Finance Executive Committee, authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute the Second Amendment to agreement number listed, external financial audit services with Malden and Jenkins LLC, to add the Department of Finance as an authorized user, to add services and funding for an audit and evaluation of the More MARTA Atlanta program in an amount not to exceed $908,000.00, subject to and expressly contingent on the adoption of the FY24 budget. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from fund department organization and account number listed herein and for other purposes. The substitute revises the caption and inserts the funding amount and account info in the first resolve clause. I'll make the motion to bring it forward. Seconded by Shook. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is before us. Ms. Carr, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Yolanda Carr, Deputy CFO. So what we're doing here is moving forward with legislation to audit More MARTA from 2017 to current, and so it's a total of $908,000. We'll be working with Malden and Jenkins to move forward with this project.
Motion from Collier Overstreet to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Shook. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The item is approved on substitute. Thank you, Ms. Carr.
Thank you.
Next item is 23-R3652, a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute special procurement agreement number listed, mobile surveillance cameras with Gelman Upfitting LLC, FMP Innovations LLC, and Siemens Industry, Inc. on behalf of the Department of Public Works pursuant to Section 2-1191.1 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances for a term of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options to be exercised at the sole discretion of the city in an amount not to exceed $500,000.00. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund department organization and account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. Department has asked us to hold this. I'll make that motion. Seconded by Hillis. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item will be held. 23-R3653. This is a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute special procurement agreement number listed, Fleet and Fuel Management, EAMASAAS with Asset Works, Inc. on behalf of the Department of Public Works pursuant to Section 2-11. Oh, so I need to read. So this is a substitute, not really an amendment. Let's just do it as a substitute, y'all, because the caption changes. It is authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute special procurement agreement number listed, Asset Works SAAS Software Solution, corrects the name, on behalf of the Department of Public Works pursuant to Section 2-1191.1 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances for a term of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options to be exercised at the sole discretion of the city in an amount not to exceed $538,559.00. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund department organization and account number listed herein and for other purposes. I'll move to bring the substitute forward, seconded by Shook. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote?
Ms. Moreland, you want to record your vote?
The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is before us.
Daphne
you have the floor.
Rackley.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not who I thought was going to talk to this.
Yes, I was pulled in. Daphne Rackley, Deputy Chief Information Officer. The Department of Public Works has been utilizing Asset Works for at least 17 plus years. That's about as far back as I could find someone around who can validate that. But they've been progressively utilizing it to maintain all of the fleet for the City of Atlanta, all the fleet that are purchased by the City of Atlanta. So there are 2 main modules. There's a fleet management module and a fuel-focused module. that looks at and manages all of the fuel pump stations across the city of Atlanta. So the purpose of this legislation is really to upgrade it and modernize it and bring it from an on-premise solution and get it out of our data center. As you know, our CIO talks about the data center strategy, and moves this to a SaaS model. And with that enterprise asset management agreement, it allows the department to use other features that are not priced in an a la carte fashion. So they get good reporting and unlimited licenses. So even as departments across the city want to have a better view into their vehicles within the system, they'll be able to do that without purchasing additional licenses, license here, license there. So for additional $25,000, you get that big suite. And we don't have IT staff that have to worry about databases and upgrades of that nature.
Oh, wait, there's more.
Yeah,
Okay, is
there you go.
All right, are any other questions? I'll make the motion to approve on substitute. Is there seconded by Shook? Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. Item is approved on substitute. Next item, 23-R3654, resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to exercise the third renewal option for contract number listed, Granicus Website Content Management System, license and support services with Granicus SaaS LLC on behalf of the Department of Atlanta Information Management for a term of 1 year effective from October 1, 2023 through September 30th, 2024 in an amount not to exceed $45,245.50. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund department organization and account number listed herein and for other purposes. CIO Sankey, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Chair Wan and members of the Finance Executive Committee. I am Jason Sankey, Chief Information Officer for the City of Atlanta. This resolution will renew license and support services for the software that we use to manage websites citywide.
Questions for the CIO? Motion from Shook, seconded by Hillis. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. Item is approved. Next item is 23-R3655. There is a substitute that changes the caption. It's a substitute resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to exercise the first renewal option for special procurement agreement number listed, Covendus On-Call IT Services with uwork.com, Inc., doing business as Covendus Technologies, Inc., on behalf of the Department of Atlanta Information Management for 1 year effective August 12, 2023 through August 11, 2024 in an amount not to exceed $4,835,600.00. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund department organization and an account number listed herein and for the purposes. The substitute revises the caption to increase the not to exceed amount and then adds DPW, FDOA, and Mayor's Office to the user group. So let's make the motion to bring the substitute forward. Seconded by Shook. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. Substitute is before us. Ms. Broom, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Chloe Broom. I have the honor and privilege of serving as Chief of Staff for the Atlanta Information Management Department. I'm here representing my team to request a renewal for Covendus resources. We leverage Covendus as a staff augmentation service, and the Department of Procurement is currently working to issue an RFP for staff augmentation services in the near future.
Any questions? Motion from Shook to approve on substitute. I'll second that. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. Item is approved on substitute. Next item, 23-R3656. Resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute renewal number 1, contract number listed, GSA Cooperative Agreement with Vertosoft for Workiva Cloud Services for the Connected Government Financial Reporting Solution with WData, utilizing the GSA contract number listed on behalf of the Department of Finance, Department of Watershed Management, and Department of Aviation for 1 year to begin June 19, 2023 through June 18, 2024 in an amount not to exceed $148,419.76. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the accounts listed and for other purposes. Ms. Carr, can you tell us about this paper, please?
Yes. This legislation is for a co-op, and this is for Workiva. We use Workiva for the PAFR and also the annual comprehensive financial report for a total of $148,000. We will have this split between Watershed, Aviation, and the Department of Finance.
Questions from Ms. Carr? And so I do have a question. There was,
Sure.
You clarified this in its current form is good to go the way it is, right?
Correct. This is the first renewal. And I believe you asked about last year or the initial obligation. That was for $70,000, and that was from December 19th, 2022 to June 18th, 2023. So it was really just half of a year almost.
Very good. Other
Yes.
questions? I'll make a motion from Shook to approve. I'll second, seconded by Hillis. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. Is it yes? Will everyone please vote? The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item is approved. All right, and then 23-R3657, it's a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to exercise the first renewal option for FC 10641 Job Order Contracting Services Small for contracts A, Beatty Construction, Inc., D, Craftsman Business Interiors, E, F.H. Passion, S.N. Nielsen and Associates, F, Greenheart Construction, Inc., G, HCR Construction, Inc., J, Kissberg Parker Fry, JV, K, Lefco Development, Inc., doing business as Lefco Construction, L, Precision 2000, Inc., M, Rubio and Sons Interiors, Inc., and N, SoCo Contracting Company, Inc., to provide citywide construction, renovation, and other services for the Department of Enterprise Assets Management and other city departments listed in the attached Exhibit A on a task order basis in an amount not to exceed $5 million and 0 cents per agreement. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund, department, organization, and account number listed herein and for other purposes. Commissioner Santil.
Greetings, Chair, members of the committee. Remy Santil, Commissioner of the Department of Enterprise Asset Management. This legislation is simply renewing the contracts for the contractors on our JOC program under the small JOC program.
Questions for the Commissioner? Motion from Shook to approve, seconded by Hillis. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. The item is approved. Great. That takes us now to dual referred items. We do have several that made it out of the preceding committees. The first one is 23-01258. There is, well, we don't, the substitute is what already comes to us, so we don't need to take another action, right? All right.
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair. We actually do, yeah.
All right, so 23-01258, we will need to bring a substitute forward. I'll read the caption in. It's an ordinance by Council Members Hillis, Westmoreland, Winston, Dozier, Bakhtiari, Juan, Amos, Collier Overstreet, Faroki, Bond, Waits, and Lewis, as substituted by Finance Executive Committee, to amend the Charter of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, 1996, Georgia Laws, page 4469 at SEEK, adopted under and by virtue of the authority of the Municipal Home Rule Act of 1965, OCGA Section 3635-1 at SEEK, as amended by amending Part 1, Charter and Related Laws, Subpart A, Charter, Article 6, Revenue and Fund Administration, Section 6101, General Power of Taxation, and to amend Part 2, Code of Ordinances, General Ordinances, Chapter 146, Taxation, Article 2, Ad valorem taxes, Division 1, generally, Sections 14626, Levy of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, to increase the amount of the park assessment from 1/2 a mil to 1 mil in order to provide for additional revenue to be utilized exclusively to support city parks, and to revise the restrictions on how such funds may be utilized to provide for increased flexibility and for other purposes. I'll make the motion to bring the substitute for us, seconded by Hillis. And just FY, it adds sections 4 through 6, which is accountability language. So let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is before us. Councilmember Hillis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Wan. Just wanted to give further details as to the accountability measures that were added. Number one, the fund will be audited every 5 years by the city auditor. Two, upon adoption, DPR will reassess all parks, rec centers, and trails and deliver a report within 180 days, a revised maintenance plan and schedule for each asset broken down by council district. That includes the new regular maintenance extent and interval, as well as schedule addressing any backlog maintenance. And then 3, and finally, DPR will provide an itemized list of all the expenditures from the fund at each DPR quarterly briefing to CDHS.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Hillis. Councilmember Shook, you have the floor.
Thank you. I appreciate the work that's gone into this. I'm going to support it today because everyone knows me as the raging optimist that I am. I'm looking forward to doing what I can do to make this paper even better in the time to come. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments on this? I think I did see the Parks Commissioner out there, but what? All right, there's a motion from Hillis to approve on substitute, seconded by Westmoreland. If there are no other questions, let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item is approved on substitute. Now, it is a charter amendment, so it will come back through us, correct? For 3 reads?
Correct,
Is that
Mr.
right?
Chair.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lindo. All right, next item, 23-01260. All right, there is a substitute that adds some names. It's an ordinance by council members Overstreet, Boone, Lewis, Amos, Dozier, Winston, Westmoreland, Bakhtiari, Waits, and Hillis, substituted and amended by Community Development Human Services Committee, authorizing the development of the City of Atlanta Fresh Food Equitable Access Incentives Program. Is there an acronym in there? No, I'm kidding. And directing the Chief Financial Officer to work with city staff and with the Atlanta Development Authority, doing business as Invest Atlanta, to develop and implement targeted grants and other incentives to promote the development of fresh food access sites in low-income access neighborhoods in Atlanta and other targeted areas of the city, and to specifically, 1, allocate $1,500,000.00 from lawfully available funding sources of the City of Atlanta and/or Invest Atlanta in order to create and fund Economic Opportunity Fund food access grants pursuant to that intergovernmental agreement for economic development services between the City of Atlanta and Invest Atlanta, and to require the receipt of a written report to the City Council after the expenditure of such funds. 2, to create a fresh food business and occupational tax waiver program for eligible businesses providing fresh food access sites in LILA neighborhoods and other targeted areas. And 3, to create, along with Invest Atlanta, a targeted ad valorem property tax incentive program as an incentive for eligible businesses to provide fresh food access sites in LILA neighborhoods or other targeted areas, to waive conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes. I'll make the motion to bring the substitute forward, seconded by Hillis. Let's open the vote, please.
Mr. Chair, we're having a problem with our system. If we can take a voice vote.
All right, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Well, I'd like to amend it. I actually would like to add my name to it. I think this is important work that Councilmember Overstreet's been doing, and I want to voice my support as well. So I make the motion to amend. Is there anyone else that wants to join in on the fun? If not, let's open that vote to amend, please. It's been seconded by Bakhtiari. Are we still down for the count? All right, can we do a voice vote on that?
Yes.
All right, on the motion to amend by Juan and Bakhtiari, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any?
Mr. Chair, what's the nature of that amendment? I'm sorry, we were focused on trying to
Add
get
my
this. Add your name. Thank you.
The most important Juan. Any opposed? 7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. Paper is amended. Before we vote on it, Councilmember Overstreet, do you want to make any comments on this, or? Okay.
Thanks for asking. I, first of all, just want to thank everyone for signing on to this type of legislation. It really is something monumental because it hasn't been done before. And this is stating that when we can't get the right buy-in from big developers and investors to really take care of our city the way that we know that it needs to be taken care of, that the city will lean in and take care of the city. We need grocery stores in several areas. We are a desert in several areas throughout Atlanta. And for that reason, I included in this legislation several districts, not just 11, because I do know that all of our constituents matter. And I just really appreciate you all understanding how many years we've worked on this. I've actually traveled with Invest Atlanta to shop Campbellton Road specifically with the package. And now we actually have incentives because we heard horrible things from different developers about it's not time, they wouldn't, shop there. We haven't had good success on the south side, and the city is hearing none of that. And so for that reason, I thank the administration for being forward-thinking. I do see the Chief of Staff and Deputy Chief of Staff standing here supporting as well, and I just really appreciate everyone. So this is a long time coming, and we still have a long way to go. So move approval.
All right, there's a motion from Overstreet to approve as substituted. Is there a second? From Hillis. Let's open that vote, please. Are we ready to, we're still need a voice vote. I tried to buy time. All right, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Westmoreland, you sure? Okay. Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Councilmember Overstreet. All right, that now takes us to 23-01262. This is an ordinance by Councilmember Michael Julian Bond to waive Chapter 2, Article 9, Division 1, Section 2-910, grant application to ratify the City of Atlanta submission of an application on behalf of the City of Atlanta for and to accept Emergency Food and Shelter Program grant funding from the Department of Homeland Security in an amount not to exceed $6,891,673.34. To enter into any necessary grant agreements to amend the fiscal year 2023 intergovernmental grant fund budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations up to $6,891,673.34. And for other purposes, this came out favorable on condition from CDHS pending submission of the account information to allocation funds. We do not have those, is that correct?
That's correct, Mr.
So
Chair.
we need to move this, approve it on condition of those being ready on June 5th.
That's correct.
I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Winston, all the way at the end there. Let's open that vote, please. Still voice vote. All right, voice vote, all in favor
One
say.
moment, Mr. We can pull it up if you'd like.
Okay, I think we should. So it was a motion by Juan, second by Winston to approve on condition. I'll go back out and come back in. How about we do a voice vote and let's move in. All right, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. All right, next item is 23-01268. It's an ordinance by Councilmember Byron D. Amos to allocate $800,000.00 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to the Safe and Secure Housing Program to increase capacity for the Office of Solicitor, to enforce the 1987 Housing Code and other laws to improve housing conditions for residents living in nuisance and substandard multifamily properties, to transfer funding from the Housing Trust Fund to the Solicitor's Office to effectuate this action and for other purposes. We need to amend this to add language in the caption and throughout that the funding is effective 2023. So I'll make the motion to amend.
2024, Mr.
2024, sorry. I'll make the motion to amend. Can I get a second, please? Seconded by Shook. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. The paper is amended. This did come out favorable out of public safety. I do have a question, though, for finance. I have gotten a couple of folks that have questioned whether the Housing Trust Fund is the most appropriate source of funds for this. Can you just walk through the logic of why that was the course of action taken?
Sure. And Mr. Humphreys from the administration is here to contribute as well. But given the impacts that this type of initiatives has on affordability and impacting certain neighborhoods, any type of work that enhances livability and affordability in the city of Atlanta could be utilized for the trust fund. The trust fund is flexible enough for us to utilize in these accords, talk to administration, and we're in line with this being an appropriate funding source.
Did you want to speak to the paper? Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chanel Zeisel. I'm the Director of Housing Policy for the Mayor's Office. So the Mayor's Safe and Secure Housing Initiative is something we started last year. We worked with many of y'all. It's an issue that's not limited really geographically. It exists throughout our city. So whether it's a code enforcement issue or a crime issue, all of those things are preventing folks from continuing to live in affordable housing. So one of the reasons why this funding is appropriate is because it will actually preserve, and I think this is one of the key areas for us as the mayor looks at affordable housing. We know that we can't just build new housing. We also have to preserve the housing that we have. So this has a direct impact on helping folks stay in their homes.
All right, Councilmember Bakhtiari.
Well, I just wanted first to take the opportunity to praise Chanel because I have not ever experienced someone that has provided the dedication you have to coming out. Thank you for coming out on site to a property that's been overlooked for decades, yesterday in my district. And I think a critical piece of the affordable housing conversation is always preservation, because most affordable housing is neglected and it eventually gets torn or is sat on and it gets torn down, and what goes in its place is not more affordable housing. And so we actually have a lot of inactivated affordable housing in the city. And so this initiative is huge for that. And I'm really extraordinarily happy that I get to work with you and that I have your cell phone and I can blow you up any day at any time. So, Mr. English, know that you have an irreplaceable person on your team. And Chanel, thank you, and I move to approve.
All right, there's a motion from Bakhtiari to approve. Oh, Councilmember Winston. Let me get a second first.
Second.
Seconded by Winston. Winston, you have the floor.
I just wanted to add, I too have gotten some comments and feedback from people that have kind of questioned, the bucket of money that we're using to do this. But I've seen firsthand in my district what preservation means in terms of affordable housing. We have units of housing in my district now that are not necessarily at the level that Forest Cove, which is in my district, has gotten to. But what this has done is it puts us at a point where we can mark or look at properties that have the potential to get there down the road and make them better now. And I think that's what's important about this legislation, is just making sure that we don't have any more Forest Coves, in the city of Atlanta, and being able to preserve the housing that's affordable now. So I just want to just add that, and thank you all for working on this.
And real quick, Mr. Chair, I want to extend my praise to Josh Humphreys as well. Just so, I don't want him to feel left out. Appreciate it.
I think you're going to have time to praise him later, too. If there's no further discussion, let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. The item is approved as amended. Okay, that takes us to held. We are 4 papers away, 23-0-1227. There is a substitute for it that does change the caption. I'll read it in. It's an ordinance by council members Westmoreland, Bond, Waits, Winston, Farokhi, Amos, Dozier, Bakhtiari, Wan, Shook, Hillis, Boone, Collier Overstreet, and Lewis, as substituted by Finance Executive Committee, to request, 1, the issuance by the Urban Residential Finance Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, of its taxable drawdown revenue bond, Series 2023, in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $100 million, and 2, the authorization and pre-validation by the Finance Authority of additional revenue bonds, the takeout bonds, in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $102 million as long-term bonds to refinance the Series 2023 drawdown bond at maturity or earlier redemption for the purpose of assisting Atlanta Housing Opportunity, Inc., a Georgia nonprofit corporation, and a public body corporate and politic and financing on behalf of the city. Additional elements of the Housing Opportunity Program, within the parameters established herein, to authorize the execution, delivery, and performance of a third amended and restated intergovernmental housing cooperation agreement with the Housing Corporation, to authorize acknowledgement of service and the filing of an answer on behalf of the city in validation proceedings to be brought in connection with the validation of the Series 2023 drawdown bond and pre-validation of the takeout bonds, to authorize the execution, delivery, and performance of a continuing covenant agreement in connection with the sale of the Series 2023 drawdown bond, to authorize certain related actions, all in connection with the Housing Opportunity Program financed through the Finance Authority's issuance of the Series 2023 drawdown bond, and authorization and pre-validation of the takeout bonds and for other purposes. I'll move to bring the substitute forward, seconded by Shook. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is before us. Did I see Chief of Staff Donald out here to speak to this one? Or someone else? Mr. Humphreys, are you speaking to this? Or I don't have my glasses on, so I don't know if there's someone else. Just bring up the whole team. Come on.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
Josh Humphreys, Senior Policy Advisor to the Mayor. So thanks for giving me a chance to talk a little bit about this paper. So a couple weeks ago, got a chance to introduce this paper. I want to talk a little bit, just kind of generally high level, what it is and why we need additional funding for affordable housing, and then what the paper itself will do. So I want to start by thanking all of you, so Councilmember Westmoreland and all the council that signed on to support this paper. I think it understates underscores the need for us to have additional resources for this. So we issued housing bond in 2021, which is continuation. Actually, this will be the fourth housing bond the city of Atlanta has issued, 2007, 2017, 2021, and then asking for another $100 million in 2023. One of the big reasons for this is that for us to hit our goal and the mayor's goal to create or preserve 20,000 affordable housing units, we need a significant amount of resources. So there are programs that we set up in 2021, and I'm happy to talk through kind of those in any detail if you've got questions about them, that are moving forward and they're on their way. Programs like owner-occupied rehab, that we thought was really important that they still have the resources kept in place there. So the funding is available, but it's earmarked for really important programs that serve our residents. But as we looked at new multifamily production, preservation, and addressing the need for affordable housing on public land, we realized that we needed additional resources. And so as we were working through all of that, an opportunity came up to work alongside the Community Foundation and the Woodruff Foundation and bring private dollars and private investment alongside public investment to really catalyze that work. So a couple of weeks ago, the mayor, alongside Community Foundation, announced a $200 million investment, 140 of which has already been secured, and another 60 that's on its way with the Community Foundation, and the intention to hopefully pass a $100 million housing bond. And so the structure of the bond, and you'll see it that's in the paper, would allow for a drawdown bond. So similar to the 2021 bond, the structure of this would allow us to only pay down debt service on the money that we use as we use it. Think of it like a credit card. The money that we spend out there, that's what you would pay the debt service on, versus a traditional bond where you start paying debt service on the full amount immediately. And so that's one tweak. After we introduced the paper, JP Morgan actually approached us and said, hey, we're willing to give you the same interest rates that we gave you in 2021, which is a much better interest rate than we could get right now in the market, and allow us to do that. So it puts us in a better financial situation in order to move that work forward. And so what this would allow us to do, and the main programs that this funding would make possible. On the preservation side, it would set aside $15 million just for multifamily preservation, which is a fundamental need for us. Chanel talked just a minute ago about the need for added enforcement. Well, if we don't have resources to do acquisition and rehab on substandard housing and older multifamily, then the enforcement only goes so far. So this really helps balance out the added enforcement around the Mayor's Safe and Secure Housing Initiative. There's funding also in this for gaps that we're seeing in deals that are very close, right? Deals that maybe got their low-income housing tax credits, which is a state award for a large portion of the funding in 2020, but they can't get across the finish line because interest rates have gone up and construction costs have gone up. So their gap, that maybe we gave them $1 million and they're like, hey, we actually can't close this deal. We need another $1 million in order to make that happen. We've got over a dozen projects, actually probably more than that, but at least a dozen projects that are that close, that just need a little bit more money, and they can close the deal now. And we think it's imperative for us to produce that housing as quickly as possible, but also close that gap, because that gap's not getting any smaller. Interest rates are continuing to go up, construction costs are continuing to go up, so that gap's going to get bigger the longer we wait to close it. So there's funding in here that will allow us to unclog our pipeline and get those projects moving. And then the last piece, and a big part of this, is around public land. So when the mayor took office, one of his big pieces, and I know I've talked with many of you about this, is how do we develop our public land portfolio in a way that can create needed affordable housing. And so there's two main things that are in here. One is around public land infrastructure. Dee Dee Beatty's back here with Atlanta Housing. She can tell you about half a dozen deals that just need a road and a sewer line, and they can get under construction. And so this would allow for infrastructure to allow those big projects to move forward. And then the last piece is around what we're calling a housing production fund. And it's additional financing that will allow public land deals that will be additive to our affordable housing market, that are not your traditional tax credit deal, but really allow us to maximize our public land in a way that helps us address our vast need for affordable housing. So to create additional resources for that. The last thing I'll note on that is that money is set up to recycle every 3 to 5 years. So the funding that's allocated to that will get used in the next 12 to 18 months, let's say, and then in 3 to 5 years, it'll get used again on another project. And so that will be in perpetuity. So that's something that will continue to reap benefits for the city in the long run. And then just generally, I'll say on all of these programs, our goal here is to get money out the door, right? We don't want a big piggy bank. We don't want to just have money for the sake of having money, but we actually want to move these projects out the door. And these programs are designed in a way, for instance, the infrastructure program that I just talked about with Dee Dee. It's like we know what those projects are. As soon as we can cut the check and we can get moving. And so that's what this will allow us to do and really get us on our way to address the deep need for affordable housing in the city.
Did you inhale at all while you were talking through all that? All right, there's a motion from Westmoreland to approve, seconded by Winston. Councilmember Bakhtiari.
If I can just take this moment to once again praise Mr. Humphreys, because he's so invaluable. And once again, Mr. English, you have an irreplaceable person on your team. Josh, do you feel better?
I do feel better now. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, the debt service payment on this is roughly $7 to $7.5 million every year. That could potentially be sourced by the half of the annual contribution to the Housing Trust Fund, correct?
Yes, and that would be the debt service on the fully allocated $100 million.
Yeah.
So remember, the drawdown facility doesn't incur anything on the front end. So, yes.
All right, any other questions?
Just asking that affordability will also, that can, oftentimes the critique is affordable housing isn't actually affordable, so I also want to make sure that this is going to encompass supportive and workforce housing as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure who talks faster, you or him. It's almost like we're on 78 RPM versus
This is why,
45. No.
So we do a competition about who talks fastest.
Okay,
you lose that competition, I think, yeah.
God, I'm like, my stress level's going up. All right, there's a motion that's been properly seconded. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open.
The irony is he's from rural Georgia.
Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item is approved on substitute. Councilmember Westmoreland, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to state on the record that in the last 5 minutes, we just took votes on the largest investment in housing affordability the city's ever done and the largest increase in parks and rec funding in half a century. Just for us to be conscious of the investments we're making in housing and in green space in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for lifting that up for us. Okay, let's keep moving. I'm going to see if I can talk as fast as Mr. Humphreys or Ms. Bakhtiari. 23-0-1237, I can't do it. An ordinance by council members Jason Winston and Liliana Bakhtiari authorizing a donation in an amount not to exceed blank to the Maynard Jackson High School Arts Boosters and for other purposes. I understand from the authors the motion is to file, correct? All right, I'll make that motion, seconded by Winston. Let's open the vote to file, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. This item will be filed. Next item is number 47, 23-R3564. We're going to bring forward a substitute. It's a substitute resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to issue task order number listed for contract FC 10641N, job order contracting services small, with SoCo Contracting Company, Inc. for office renovations for the Department of Procurement on behalf of the Department of Enterprise Asset Management in an amount not to exceed $2,800,000.00. All work to be charged to and paid from the accounts listed and for other purposes. I'll move to bring the substitute forward, which changes the source of funding to ARPA. Can I get a second, please? Seconded by Shook. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. Vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is before us. Commissioner Santiago, you have the floor.
Greetings again, Chair and members of the committee. Remy Santil, Commissioner of Department of Enterprise Asset Management. This legislation is as read just for the renovations of the Department of Procurement in City Hall.
Questions for the commissioner? Motion from Shook to approve on substitute, seconded by Overstreet. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item is approved on substitute. All right. Now, colleagues, we do have one walk-in paper. I will read that caption in. It is ELMS number 32728, resolution by Finance Executive Committee, committing the City of Atlanta to help fulfill a $100 million transformation of the South River Forest, adopting the recommendations of the Explore South River Forest report commissioned by the Atlanta Regional Commission, and requesting the executive offices of the mayor prepare and deliver an implementation plan by December 1, 2023, and for other purposes. Is there any discussion on this? Councilmember Bakhtiari.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so given the significance of the conversation we've been having around South Forest River and to the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of comments around the need for investment in this community, the point of this is to continue the conversation, because even though we voted for the facility today, the fact of the matter is that the conversation should not end there. We absolutely have to make sure this is one of the most polluted rivers in the country. We have a situation where we have land that has little to no conservation. We have entities that have put forward visioning for this, and this is an opportunity to jumpstart that. I wanted to walk this in today, and I want to thank Councilmember Westmoreland and Councilmember Dozier for their help on this. The significance of walking this in today was to show that while we have done less than an admirable job of messaging around facility and have a lot of constituents that are in pain, the point is to show that the conversation is not done, and that we have trust to earn back, and we need to show investment in this community outside of just putting the facility. We also need to use this as an opportunity to jumpstart the visioning that has been proposed for decades. Atlanta Regional Commission just put forth their recommendations with the help of some brilliant conservationists and ecologists. So this is a start. This is not us designating $100 million. This is an opportunity for us to identify where this money can come from. We put in this paper that a date by beginning of December of this year that will have a write-up of what it will take to do proper investment of reforestation, removal of invasives, but also fixing rampant wastewater issues and making efforts to clean this river. And again, it most importantly continues the conversation and makes sure that it does not end on June 5th.
Councilmember Collier-Overstreet.
Thank you. So I want to make sure that I explain why I will be abstaining from this. I definitely don't want to shut the conversation down in any way, because I believe in green space very much. You know, my track record shows that, even in my district and throughout the city. But I have readiness of even speaking about $100 million that I just found out about, like a couple hours ago. So, we are going to not see this paper before us, because I'm sure it does have proper support, probably, until June the 5th. And I will be able to, just navigate all of the wording a little better by then, hopefully. And I also have a question as to how does this layer in with the task force that's been put forth over deciding those 4 pillars that DCOO Burks talked about? I just don't know how this will affect all of those other engines that we have running right now. And I just have to have more clarity before I can say yes. So I'll just be abstaining just so I can get some research done.
Completely understand, and your questions, I'm certain will make this better, and I'm happy to work with you to address them. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was very fortunate to serve on this steering committee with the Atlanta Regional Commission. I want to thank Molly Bogle for her tremendous work from ARC, from helping put this report together. The South River Forest Vision provides a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to bring over 3,500 acres of disconnected urban forest together, and I'm happy to support this, and I'm happy that my colleagues also are part of this vision, and I can't wait to see this through. So I just want to thank you all for your effort on this, and thank everyone who served on the Atlanta Regional Commission Steering Commission to help make this report happen. So thank you.
And I also wanted, and my oversight, I also meant to thank Councilmember Winston for the work he did on this ARC piece, because I was not on it, so thank you for that, and I move to approve.
All right, there's a motion from Bakhtiari to approve. Is there a second? Maybe from Winston? Seconded from Winston. I just want, for the tens of viewers that we have at this point in this meeting, wanted to acknowledge that the caption that's on the screen is actually different than the caption I read in, but the caption that I read in is the correct one, and it's what will go into the system. So.
Yes. And I will make sure for our tens of viewers, this will be posted on Twitter and everything else, also explaining that we have work to do between now and June 5th to address and work out those issues that Councilmember Overstreet brought up. Or, I'm sorry, that were brought up, and we will work together to address any additional concerns.
All right, if there's no further discussion, let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. The motion carries. This item is approved. All right, Ms. Lindo, that concludes all of our legislative items, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Wow, okay. Well, I've got an announcement, sorry. Metro, hello, no, I'm kidding. There are no meetings next week. It's our 5th week, so everybody please have a happy and safe Memorial Day holiday. We'll have full council on June 5th, and then right the next day at 10 o'clock potentially. On June 6th, Tuesday, we'll continue the FY24 budget hearings. That day we'll have enterprise asset management and then city planning. Afternoon will be grants and community development, followed by parks and recreation, and then public hearings on the millage rate, as well as the budget public hearing. Other comments, Councilmember
Quick question, they will be able to, viewers will be able to stream that on both Facebook and Channel 26?
Correct, yes, that'll be on social media, I think, and then they can send in questions. We'll get that information, it's on the website. Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Winston, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to give a very special happy birthday shout out to my daughter, Decker, who is 1 year old today.
Oh
so,
wow.
Daddy, can't wait to see you. Happy birthday. I also learned that it's our CPO's birthday, Shadeep Majumdar. So happy birthday to you also. So he was in the building, but I just saw him leave out. So also happy birthday to our CPO. Thank you.
Yes, colleagues, I forgot, we've got the city auditor, Amanda Noble, that wanted to come and just make a quick announcement or just report. You have the floor, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll be very brief because I know you're ready to leave. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that we have published corrections to our municipal market audit that we emailed to everybody May 12th, but I know emails can get lost in the shuffle, and we also posted it to our website. After publication, a stakeholder identified an error in our report. We significantly overestimated the annual public subsidy by misreading comparable rents as cost per square foot per month rather than cost per square foot per year. While the overestimate affected the tone of the report, it did not affect our overall findings and recommendations. So we have validated that the market was charging most tenants below market rents. And our corrected analysis showed that the market-based rents were an average of 36% below the average of available rental and restaurant spaces in the area in early 2023, excluding the common area maintenance fees. So we sincerely regret the error. And again, the corrected report was sent to the full distribution list and is posted on our website.
All right, any questions for?
Any questions?
Madam Auditor? Thank you for being here to make that
Thank you.
clarification.
And I do appreciate you making that correction because this does sit in my district, and I do appreciate that correction. And I'm also looking forward to continue working with Mr. Pace, you, and that board to make
Yes.
adjustments based on the findings. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, with that, we stand adjourned. We'll see everybody on June 5th. Thank you.